again, it just tells the story of the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
This is Franky Rose's Think Tank. Here's your host, Franky Rose.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Think Tank. So we are going to watch the House Committee hearing today on Trump's ear piercing, I guess you would say. So let's watch this together and see what we can learn. This is important to everybody.
In terms of what has been released.
Might have to crank up your volume.
I was present for one press briefing on the night of Saturday night, July 13th, and we've been deferential to the FBI on that. So I would refer you to the FBI. The timelines that you're quoting, I just want to be clear on the record. To my knowledge and belief, I don't have a minute-by-minute timeline. I've had multiple briefings about what these interviews have gleaned, but they're from the perspective of PSP investigating the homicide and the 2 attempted homicides.
Thank you, Colonel. During the event, at what point in the day was someone from your team first made aware that there was a potential suspicious person or possible threat?
So based on my knowledge and belief, that information relayed to the command post from Butler ESU in terms of crooks was the first time that I'm aware of. Again, keeping in mind, I've heard estimates that there were 13,000 people there. There were multiple people identified as suspicious, several that were identified in that area.
Yes, thank you. Now you stated before in your questions that you haven't seen an operation plan, but didn't your team participate, and why haven't you seen the plan?
So as my answer prior on the record, I've asked for it. The state police has asked for it. We have yet to receive it. And my understanding is that our walkthrough with our commanders and our area commander was to delineate what our responsibilities were, and we endeavored to fulfill those responsibilities.
Who was the Secret Service agent in charge of the advance team?
I don't know the name of the agent.
How was PSP supposed to communicate with Secret Service on the advance team?
You mean in the planning leading up to it? So my understanding is, as is typical, we're notified. We were notified by email on July 5th. The meeting on July 8th, Monday, was to get all of those partners together to exchange information, how they could communicate with one another, and then the planning took place from there.
Could you provide our committee a copy of all those communications, Colonel Pierce?
So I will check with our legal counsel. I mean, Pennsylvania has multiple state statutes that cover investigative plans or law enforcement sensitive information.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, one more thing, if I may. Trump's Secret Service protection could be removed under Benny Thompson's proposed legislation. This legislation was introduced while the politically weaponized government was prosecuting former President Donald Trump. This would leave him at risk. I'd also like to state for the record for this committee that over 140 inmates are murdered in prison every single year. This is a dangerous place, prison is, and of course, 8% of violence in prison leads to murder of inmates. This legislation is reckless, and the minority ranking member needs to withdraw this legislation that would lead to the murder of President Trump.
Ladies, time has expired. I now recognize, well, we're not going to debate.
You think that statement should be made when the ranking member is here so he can at least address it?
He made his point earlier about his bill. There's a difference of opinion, I suppose, but y'all are out. Okay. I now recognize Mr. LaLota for 5 minutes question.
Thank you, Chairman. 10 days ago,
All right, guys, I'm up here on the building where the supposed sniper took his shot. It's not that steep at all. We just had a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me? had Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof. He would have been taken out. Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where the
Can you guys cut it right there,
the
please?
president was giving his speech from. A lot of questions here in Butler.
Cut it. Thank you. All right, Colonel Paris, did you notice when you showed up on site what the tallest structure on the site was?
I can't say at the moment that I arrived that I did, no, sir.
Okay. Now that you've had a chance to go back and look over it, what is the tallest structure on that site?
The water towers.
Absolutely. Colonel, do you know how far the water tower was from the roof where the shooter took his shots?
I do not.
160 yards, sir. Who made the decision, Colonel, not to put a counter sniper team on the tallest structure by far on the site with 360-degree surveillance? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, sir.
Okay, we'd like to get that answer. Did you see the video that showed me sticking my phone out the second-story window? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, exposing the coverage of the window of the entire roof. Are you aware that local law enforcement and Secret Service had full access to that building in that room?
My understanding is that they did.
Yeah. Why weren't security teams, sir, on site able to spot a 20-year-old kid with zero camouflage crawling up a white roof with an AR-15 that several rally goers were screaming and yelling and pointing out, and they noticed him, and they weren't even there to conduct security. They were there to watch the president. Do you have any idea why the security teams couldn't find that guy?
I do not, sir.
Would the gentleman yield for just a
Yes,
second
yes,
on
sir.
that? So just for clarification, it was the ESU guys that were manning those buildings?
Yep.
And they left because of the call of the suspicious person. So they left their post there to go look for him. They're the same individuals who attempted to climb up the building and were scared away by the shooter pointing the gun, right?
I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
that's
just
fine.
wondering why they weren't able to find him, because even while they were looking, they could have still looked out that window that they had access to. All right. Colonel Paris, I'm just going to say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
I have not, sir.
You haven't? Well, there's a lot of people in this room that have been getting the same messages. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong, right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the president of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance, was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter sniper operations. I was a sniper in the SEAL teams, Colonel. As soon as I got out of the SUV and I saw that that water tower, I was like, that's exactly where I'd be. Put me right there. So obvious. After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions as a modern day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that a lot of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
I wouldn't begin to speculate about what the American people think, sir.
Colonel, did your team make entry and conduct investigation at the suspect's home prior to this shooting?
Excuse me, sir. I asked that question.
Did your team make entry and conduct any investigation at the suspect's home?
I believe we had people that participated in that securing of it. There were bomb assets that we provided.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, I'm letting everybody kind of.
Okay.
On the night of. Since then, none.
Did you get any reports from any of your agents of anything fishy at the home?
I was briefed on.
Was there any silverware found in the home or trash?
I have nothing in the briefing that I was given, sir.
Was it extremely clean, almost like a medical lab? Were you given any of those reports?
I was not giving any of those details, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Interesting. The last thing I want to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, this is article opinion from, I believe, the Washington Post by Robert Kagan. A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending. This article compares Trump to Caesar and attempts to justify the assassination of President Trump. And I think even though we want to dodge around it and not make this partisan, I think we all know that a lot of this has to do with the rhetoric, the very violent rhetoric that has led up to this. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields, and so ordered on the entry of that into the record. I now recognize Mr. Burkeen for 5 minutes of testimony or witness questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've enjoyed.
Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Guest, for his 5 minutes. Mr. Guest for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and gentlemen, thank you for both being here today. You both classified as what happened on July 13th as critical failures. I would expand that and say it was a colossal failure. And I think you have both stated that the ultimate responsibility for what occurred that day falls upon the Secret Service. Colonel Paris, I know that your officers were there in a support role. You were following the operational plan set out by Secret Service. You testified that the primary responsibilities for your officers were motorcade and then the interior perimeter, and that you had 2 roving officers there, really just out there to provide support if necessary and called upon. You mentioned earlier that you went to the scene on the 13th, and thank you for going there and being a part of that. And you also testified earlier that you have not been provided the operational plan by the Secret Service. Is that correct?
That's correct. We haven't received it yet.
When did you request that?
I'd have to go back and check in the earlier part of the investigation. That was just something that we asked for as a matter of course. We were not told no. We just, to date, have yet to receive it.
And that would be important, would it not? If you're going to investigate what happened on that day, the operational plan, that is the starting point for all the events that later transpired. Is that correct?
Well, I don't want to overstate the role of the state police here is to investigate the 3 Pennsylvanians that were shot and the use of force by the Secret Service counter sniper. To the extent that we need to know the sequence of events leading up to that, we obviously would like to know as much as we can, but it's not our role to do an after action report on the sequence.
Well, but all the shootings occurred simultaneously. The same shot that struck President Trump, one of those shots killed one of your fellow citizens, and 2 others were injured. And so you can't separate the 2. This is one investigation into a shooting that occurred. The Secret Service director, where she refused to answer questions and has now resigned. I find that to be especially troubling. We have the Secret Service not wanting to cooperate with Congress, not wanting to cooperate with a fellow law enforcement agency. And I personally find that troubling. As we look, and as you are aware from speaking to your officers that were there physically on the scene that day, did Secret Service, did they have any drones in the air so that they could have an eye in the sky and see what was happening, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware that they were using drones, but that
and
I haven't seen the operations.
Does your agency have drones?
We do maintain some drones.
So if Secret Service would have requested your agency to fly drones that day, you would have been able to do so. Is that correct?
We would have endeavored to try to honor that request. Yes, sir.
And you testified that you've been to the scene of the shooting. Did you see the water tower that's located approximately 100 yards from the building where the shooter fired those shots?
I did see it, sir.
And would it have been possible to have put an officer, and again, that's not your responsibility to do that, that's the Secret Service's, but would it have been possible to put an officer there looking down on the scene of the rally and the building where the shooter occurred? Would that have been something that would have been possible to do?
Presuming that there's a way to access the water tower. I didn't walk over. I was probably several hundred yards away, so I can't say that I could.
And if you had an officer up there, that would have provided you a strategic viewpoint of the events that were transpiring below, correct?
I would agree. Tactics, height gives a tactical advantage, yes, sir.
And then I want to ask you also about the roof where the shooter was located. You said you didn't go on the roof, but you viewed the roof. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The Secret Service director, prior to her resignation, said that she did not put anybody on the roof because it had a sloped roof that would have created a safety concern. I was in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday with many members of this committee. My fellow member, Carlos Jimenez, who is 70 years old, and I guess he doesn't mind me saying that since he has put that information out there. There's video of him easily traversing the roof, walking across the roof, and even though he is some 50 years older than the shooter. And so my question is, do you agree with the assessment of the former Secret Service director that the roof was so sloped that it created safety concerns?
I can't agree with that statement, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm out of time and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, I'd like to carry the dialogue on about the specific timeline. I have a timeline that was given to us on the Oversight Committee yesterday when we questioned former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, as she has resigned today. But the timeline that I'd like to talk to you about is exactly what you were just discussing here. 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, it was at 5:45 that the Butler County Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof, took a picture and reported it. You stated just a few minutes before in your testimony that police or PSP were given a phone number to the Secret Service and that Butler County Emergency Services texted or sent the picture. Was that a text? Was that a digital platform? Was it an email? How did they send the picture?
So just to be clear, at that period of time, at 18:45, I don't believe testimony was
5:45 p.m.
17:45, 5:45 p.m. Yes, ma'am. He was not up on the roof at that point in time.
No. Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof. This is the timeline that we have. Took a picture and reported it. Who did they send that picture to?
Just to be clear, they were posted in the AGR building and took a picture of him. That's what you're.
Yes. Who did they send the picture to?
So I only know from interviews what I can confirm to my knowledge and belief here today that a member of Pennsylvania State Police inside of the command post received that information telephonically and by text, relayed it to the Secret Service, and then was given a number to follow up on. And that was based, again, heightened suspicion.
How did they relay it to Secret Service?
I believe that they verbally turned and said in the command post, this is information that I just received. And then in follow up to that, as directed from the interview that I was briefed on, that was forwarded by text as requested by the Secret Service.
Can you give us copies of that communication and that phone number that was given to them was for Secret Service?
So that's part of the ongoing investigation, and I would defer to the legality of.
Can you find that information and provide it to our committee?
I will look to see if legally I will consult Chief Counsel within the State Police, but it is an ongoing criminal investigation.
Oh,
So after it was reported, President Trump took the stage at 6:03 p.m. All of this took place. This was 18 minutes before President Trump actually took the stage at 6:03 p.m. President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. This has all been reported. These timelines. Why do you not have a timeline?
Because it's not the timeline is going to be critical for the after action report. Obviously, we're conducting an investigation with the FBI. We have been deferential to the FBI in terms of what has been released to the media. I was present for one press briefing on the night of Saturday night, July 13th, and we've been deferential to the FBI on that. So I would refer you to the FBI. The timelines that you're quoting, I just want to be clear on the record. To my knowledge and belief, I don't have a minute-by-minute timeline. I've had multiple briefings about what these interviews have gleaned, but they're from the perspective of PSP investigating the homicide and the 2 attempted homicides.
Thank you, Colonel. During the event, at what point in the day was someone from your team first made aware that there was a potential suspicious person or possible threat?
So based on my knowledge and belief, that information relayed to the command post from Butler ESU, in terms of Crooks, was the first time that I'm aware of. Again, keeping in mind, I've heard estimates that there were 13,000 people there. There were multiple people identified as suspicious, several that were identified in that area.
Yes, thank you. Now, you stated before in your questions that you haven't seen an operation plan, but didn't your team participate, and why haven't you seen the plan?
So as my answer prior on the record, I've asked for it. The state police has asked for it. We have yet to receive it. And my understanding is that our walkthrough with our commanders and our area commander was to delineate what our responsibilities were, and we endeavored to fulfill those responsibilities.
Who was the Secret Service agent in charge of the advance team?
I don't know the name of the agent.
How was PSP supposed to communicate with Secret Service on the advance team?
You mean in the planning leading up to it? So my understanding is, as is typical, we're notified. We were notified by email on July 5th. The meeting on July 8th, Monday, was to get all of those partners together to exchange information, how they could communicate with one another, and then the planning took place from there.
Could you provide our committee a copy of all those communications, Colonel Pierce?
So I will check with our legal counsel. I mean, Pennsylvania has multiple state statutes that cover investigative plans or law enforcement sensitive information.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, one more thing, if I may. Trump's Secret Service protection could be removed under Benny Thompson's proposed legislation. This legislation was introduced while the politically weaponized government was prosecuting Donald Trump. This would leave him at risk. I'd also like to state for the record for this committee that over 140 inmates are murdered in prison every single year. This is a dangerous place, prison is, and of course, 8% of violence in prison leads to murder of inmates. This legislation is reckless, and the minority ranking member needs to withdraw this legislation that would lead to the murder of President Trump.
Ladies, time has expired. I now recognize, well, we're not going to debate.
Just you think that statement should be made when the ranking members here so we can at least address it?
He made his point earlier about his bill. There's a difference of opinion, I suppose. But we're just, y'all are out. Okay. I now recognize Mr. Lalota for 5 minutes question.
Thank you, Chairman. 10 days ago.
Is that not the drone? Right.
Guys, I'm up here on the building where the supposed sniper took his shot. It's not that steep at all. Just had a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me? Had Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof. He would have been taken out. Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where
Can you guys cut it right there, please?
The president was giving his speech from. A lot of questions here in Butler.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Colonel Paris, did you notice when you showed up on site what the tallest structure on the site was?
I can't say at the moment that I arrived that I did, no, sir.
Okay. Now that you've had a chance to go back and look over it, what is the tallest structure on that site?
The water towers.
Absolutely. Colonel, do you know how far the water tower was from the roof where the shooter took his shots?
I do not.
160 yards, sir. Who made the decision, Colonel, not to put a counter sniper team on the tallest structure by far on the site with 360-degree surveillance? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. We'd like to get that answer. Did you see the video that showed me sticking my phone out the second-story window? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, exposing the coverage of the window of the entire roof. Are you aware that local law enforcement and Secret Service had full access to that building in that room?
My understanding is that they did.
Yeah. Why weren't security teams, sir, on site able to spot a 20-year-old kid with zero camouflage crawling up a white roof with an AR-15 that several rally goers were screaming and yelling and pointing out, and they noticed him, and they weren't even there to conduct security. They were there to watch the president. Do you have any idea why the security teams couldn't find that guy?
I do not, sir.
Would the gentleman yield for just a second on that? So just for clarification, it was the ESU guys that were manning those buildings.
Yep.
And they left because of the call of the suspicious person. So they left their post there to go look for him. They're the same individuals who attempted to climb up the building and were scared away by the shooter pointing the gun, right?
I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
that's
just
fine.
wondering why they weren't able to find him, because even while they were looking, they could have still looked out that window that they had access to. All right. Colonel Paris, I'm just going to say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
I have not, sir.
You haven't? Well, there's a lot of people in this room that have been getting the same messages. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong? Right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance, was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive.
Okay, guys, so right now we are waiting for the Secret Service to outline DNC's security plans. So we're going to watch that next. What we were watching just a minute ago was a repeat of what we watched earlier. So hopefully I got some bad. Let's see here.
We're all here today to provide information on the security plan for the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Our goal is to provide you with as much information as quickly as possible and get that to the citizens of Chicago and those who are visiting the city during the DNC. There's a lot of people here today from the media, so we'll have some time for questions and answer afterward. If we don't have time to get to everyone, we'll be around after to answer some of your questions. And you can also send them to dncmedia@cityofchicago.com. And many of you also have my email. After the press conference, we'll be sending out a release along with the maps. And so before we bring in today's speakers, I'm going to go over just some ground rules and then the agenda for who will be speaking today. So you'll hear remarks first from Deputy Special Agent in Charge, Derek Meyer. It's pronounced Meyer. It's spelled M-A-Y-E-R. Derek is D-E-R-E-K. And he's the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Chicago Field Office for the Secret Service. Then you'll have Governor J.B. Pritzker, J.B., P-R-I-T-Z-K-E-R, followed by Mayor Brandon Johnson, Brandon, B-R-A-N-D-O-N, Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N. I know you all know this, but Superintendent Larry Snelling will follow the mayor. That's L-A-R-R-Y-S-N-E-L-L-I-N-G. And then 2024 DNC coordinator Jeff Burnside, who is leading this for the Secret Service. He will then come up, go through the maps, explain where the perimeters are, and what some of those ramifications will be for the surrounding area. So he'll give a comprehensive review. Followed by that, we'll have acting FBI Special Agent in Charge, Lucas Rothar, Lucas L-U-C-A-S, Rothar, R-O-T-H-A-A-R. And then lastly, it'll be Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications Executive Director Jose Tirado, Jose J-O-S-E, Tirado, T-I-R-A-D-O. Following the remarks, like I said, we'll have a brief Q&A. We have a hard stop at 12:30, so given the number of all you here today, we're not going to have time to go into off-topic questions. If you do, we have a number of public affairs folks in the room today that we can answer your questions afterward. And then we ask that when we'll call on you for questions. So if we call on you, you ask a question and a follow-up, and please lead with your name and outlet. And then, like I said, any questions that don't get answered today, please send them to the appropriate agency or office. So with that, we'll bring in the speakers. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing I wanted to mention. This is a national special security event for those who don't know. So this is designated by the Department of Homeland Security, and this will be the 79th NSSE since their inception. And the Chicago field office was in charge of both the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee last week, as well as the DNC. So now with that, we'll bring in the speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Derek Meyer, and I am the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Secret Service's Chicago Field Office. I must begin by saying the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th was a terrible day for our entire nation. The investigation into this incident is being handled in Washington, D.C. The Secret Service remains dedicated to transparency and is working diligently to seek answers. An incident like what took place in Butler, Pennsylvania, must never happen again. I have been working in the Chicago field office for the past 6 years. This is my home, and I'm eager for the 2024 Democratic National Convention to come to this city. The Secret Service has been working diligently over the past year with our local, state, and federal partners to develop a security plan for the convention. We're here to unveil the security perimeter for the 2024 DNC, which will take place at the United Center, McCormick Place, and other venues throughout the city. The events run from August 19th through August 22nd. The convention has been designated a national special security event, which brings with it a full complement of resources from the federal government. These NSSEs also rely heavily on partnership. Many of those on our team are here today, including Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling, U.S. Secret Service DNC Coordinator Jeffrey Burnside, FBI Acting Special Agent in Charge Lucas Rothar, and Jose Tirado, the Executive Director of the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications. We also have representatives from other key agencies on hand to answer your questions. The perimeter maps you will soon see were carefully crafted with input from our public safety partners, community groups, local businesses, traffic and transportation experts. The Secret Service has also been working closely with our counterparts in the Department of Homeland Security and at the White House since the incident took place on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. We have reviewed the security plan for the DNC and remain confident. Our plan allows us to adjust for any possible scenario. Earlier this month, the Secret Service coordinated security for the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee and the NATO Summit in Washington, D.C. These events were conducted in a secure environment, and we expect similar results in Chicago. This is a city that regularly works together to host large-scale events such as the NASCAR race, Lollapalooza, and Taste of Chicago. The Chicago Police Department plays a pivotal role in the success of these events, and Superintendent Snelling has been a tremendous partner. The superintendent is among 17 public safety entities, including the U.S. Secret Service, participating in the Executive Steering Committee. This committee oversaw the development of the DNC operational security plan, relying on subcommittee staff with experts on various topics, including national intelligence, consequence management, maritime security, airspace security, traffic control, and more. The DNC plan has subsequently been tested and reinforced through multiple interagency exercises over the past 4 months, including 5 tabletop exercises and numerous field training operations. These run-throughs allow our law enforcement partners to evaluate the security plans throughout various scenarios. We will host a final training exercise just days before the official arrival of the first delegates. These exercises, previous experiences with large-scale events, and extensive planning all contribute to a level of confidence ahead of the convention. Our preparation includes detailed procedures for planned and pop-up demonstrations. I want everyone to know that the Secret Service and our public safety partners respect every American's First Amendment rights. The superintendent has assured that CPD is well equipped to manage protests, and plans are in place to keep those gatherings safe. The shared goal is for everyone to express their views lawfully while ensuring a secure environment for delegates, convention attendees, and the general public. We are also intentional about creating a plan that minimizes disruptions to the community as much as possible. We know that security for an event of this size will have an impact. To that end, the Secret Service and our partners have conducted dozens of outreach events with businesses, residences, and community groups. The objective is to effectively communicate our plan and mitigate confusion to the greatest extent possible. This effort has reached more than 900 members of the public, representing more than 500 organizations and businesses throughout the Chicago area. We will continue to reach out to the community in the days ahead, including sharing the perimeter maps through a community canvassing effort tomorrow around the United Center. The cooperation, dedication, and genuine desire to ensure a safe and successful convention has been remarkable. Everyone remains focused on implementing a seamless security plan. Again, I want to thank our partners for the work they have already done and the steadfast commitment to maintaining a secure environment for all involved once the DNC kicks off. Our primary focus is safety, and I know Chicago is ready to host a convention. I would now like to introduce Illinois Governor J.P. Pritzker.
Well, thank you very much, Derek, and thank you all for joining us today. It really is my honor to be here alongside the people who are making this historic Democratic National Convention possible. I want to first thank Jeff Burnside and the entire United States Secret Service for their tireless work to keep Chicago and all of us attending the DNC safe. Your professionalism, truly, and your sacrifices make us proud. In less than a month, thousands will gather here in Chicago to make their voices heard by participating in the convention. The eyes of the world will be on our great city, and safety and security have remained our top priorities. It is thanks to the tireless efforts and coordination of the agencies that are represented in this room from all levels of government that convention goers and residents alike can participate and spectate to the fullest extent without fear for their safety. I want to acknowledge some of the great local and state leaders and agencies who have sacrificed nights and weekends in pursuit of that effort. The staff and representatives from the mayor's office and the city of Chicago, the Chicago Fire Department, led by Commissioner Annette Nance Holt, Chicago Police Department, led by Superintendent Larry Snelling, and the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications, led by Director Jose Tirado. Illinois Emergency Management Agency and Office of Homeland Security, led by Director Alicia Tate-Nadeau, the Illinois National Guard, led by Major General Rodney Boyd, the Illinois State Police, led by Director Brendan Kelly, Illinois Department of Transportation, led by Secretary Omar Osman, and dozens of other state agencies. We all should take great comfort in having such a sizable and hardworking and skilled force dedicated solely to our safety and security, mapping out truly every detail.
Sadly, it didn't work last
convention
time.
Sites across the city. And with these comprehensive public safety plans and security measures, we should sleep soundly knowing how much preparation has been done. I also want to stress our commitment to transparency and information sharing throughout this process. It will be absolutely vital for our collective safety and security, for the minimal disruption to residents' daily lives, and for the smooth flow of the convention, that we keep the public informed and vigilant. I encourage all residents and convention goers to pay close attention to public announcements and posted signage to ensure that they are prepared. What will take place next month is a beautiful display of American democracy in action. Here in Chicago, millions will watch. Tens of thousands visiting from around the globe and around the United States will witness a triumph of political expression and engagement, doing so without fear for their safety. That is a testament to our democratic culture. But more importantly, it is thanks to the hard work and sacrifice of the folks you see standing up here today. I also want to thank each and every one of you in the audience who are engaged in this endeavor for your service. We all owe you a sincere debt of gratitude. To those visiting us next month, enjoy our terrific global city of Chicago. And with that, I'm pleased to turn this podium over to our partner and friend, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Mayor.
Thank you, Governor. You bet. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Governor Pritzker. Is it morning still? Is it? Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. The state of Illinois has been an incredible partner, Governor Pritzker, throughout this entire endeavor. Of course, we do appreciate the work of U.S. Secret Service, the FBI, the DNCC, as well as the DNC Host Committee, all of the city departments, sister agencies who remain hard at work preparing Chicago for the 2024 Democratic National Convention. And thank you for your leadership and cooperation over the past year to ensure that we are ready to host the best national convention yet. And let me state this unequivocally. Chicago is ready. We were born ready. And I'm not just talking about the convention itself. So much has changed from our first announcement regarding the DNC to now. Now Chicago is not just hosting another convention. We are welcoming a new breath of life into our nation with the historic nomination of Vice President Kamala Harris. Though this is our city's 26th time hosting a national convention, this moment is like no other. Chicago has already cemented itself in history for electing trailblazers to the highest office in the land. And as we prepare for the first Black woman to win the Democratic nomination for president of these United States, there's no better place to host this national convention than right here in the city of Chicago. We are no stranger to hosting large-scale events. Chicago hosted NATO in 2012, NASCAR for the second year in a row, and hundreds of conventions each year. We have a proven track record.
Is NASCAR the same though? Is it?
Our past experiences and expertise hosting events have given us great lessons in preparation for the 2024 DNC. In a few moments, our federal partners and public safety agency leaders will describe the safety plans in place to safeguard residents, visitors, delegates, protesters, and everyone else in between. Meanwhile, our city departments have been working hard to showcase this beautiful city. This is an all hands on deck, and it's a citywide effort. The Department of Streets and Sanitation continues to do its work, trimming trees, cleaning up public spaces, sidewalks, beautifying our neighborhoods from the north side to the south side, ensuring that they are ready to be on the global stage. The Park District is keeping our green space clean and clear, and the Department of Transportation has added accessibility improvements to repaired sidewalks and repaved streets. They are also painting light poles and planting flowers to further beautify our city. So in other words, the men and women who staff our departments are continuing to do the things that they do every single day serving the city of Chicago. And after it was announced that Chicago would be hosting the 2024 DNC, I was clear that in our preparation, we must invest in legacy projects that will uplift our residents and serve our community long after the convention. A great example is the construction of the $80 million CTA Damon and Lake Green Line station. This station fills a gap between existing stations on the Green Line to provide transit access to those living and working near Kinsey Street corridor. This will greatly benefit the West Side neighborhoods. And of course, all of those who will be visiting the United Center. And through all of this work, our commitment is clear. We will secure a safe and vibrant Democratic National Convention and continue to serve the residents who rely on our city department's dedicated service each and every day. To those preparing to visit us, we look forward to you experiencing what I call the soul of Chicago. From our diverse cultural experiences to our world-class dining, breathtaking views of our lake and skyline, and the amazing people that make up the 77 diverse communities. There is no way to experience all of Chicago in one trip. So go ahead and just put your money away so that you can come back and visit us in the fall and next summer. And with our preparation in place, I'm confident that the 2024 DNC will be a safe and successful convention. Most importantly, finally, this will be a peaceful and unified expression of our sacred democratic process. Whether you want to exercise your First Amendment, visit the convention, or just simply continue to live and work in Chicago like you normally do, you will be protected and served throughout this convention. In just 23 days, Chicago will showcase our great spirit, the vibrant neighborhoods, the readiness to usher in our nation's bright future. And thanks to all of our partners from the city and beyond who are making this moment possible. I look forward to our continued collaboration in the final days and throughout this convention. And so let's make sure that we are geared up for the people across the globe who will get a chance to experience our democracy. So thank you all again. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Chicago Police Department Superintendent Larry Snelly.
Good morning.
Morning.
First, I'd like to thank our partners at the Secret Service for hosting this. I also want to thank Mayor Johnson, Governor Pritzker, all of our public safety, law enforcement partners who are here with us today. I'd also like to thank, because we can't leave out two key components that we partner with on a daily basis as the Chicago Police Department. First of all, Director Annette Lance Holt of the Fire Department. The partnership has been great. Commissioner, I'm sorry. And I'll pay for that later. I'll do some push-ups. And also Director Torado of OEMC. The partnership has just been great, but the partnership with OEMC and the Fire Department has been excellent throughout the years. There are a lot of things that we as the Chicago Police Department could not do without them. So I'd like to thank them. I also have to thank my team here. I can't say enough about the incredible work that they're doing. Chief Dwayne DeVries, Deputy Chief Chris Papayuano, say that 3 times fast, and Deputy Chief Jill Stevens. They've just done such a great job of working with our federal partners. So I just want to start out by saying this. Our partnership with the Secret Service is strong. Ever since we started this process a year ago, we have had a great partnership, great communication, great collaboration. Without that communication and collaboration, we could not be where we are right now in the planning for the DNC. The partnership between the Chicago Police Department, Secret Service, as well as federal, state, municipal agencies has been outstanding, because what we're looking for is a safe and successful DNC, and we'll continue the partnership throughout and for many years to come. For more than a year, we've been working together to make this a successful event. It has to be safe in order for it to be successful. We started training over a year ago. When we look at our partners and the information that we gather from our partners, the intelligence that we gather from our partners, the intelligence that we discover ourselves, we plan around those things. We're flexible, we're fluid. And as things change, we're able to adapt, assess those situations, and make necessary changes if those changes are necessary. I don't want anybody to believe that we think that we have to make changes. We do not at this point, but we are prepared to move with the flow of intelligence that we gather. We also look at best practices. So as we assess, as we move forward, we will continue to do what is absolutely necessary to keep the city safe. So our training, since this started, Commander Ralph Cruz, I cannot say enough about him. He's headed up the training. He was also my partner during the NATO event. We headed up the training for that event. We also had the first responding teams in the field when we went out. So I have all the confidence in the world that there's experience here in dealing with these types of events. Also, my team that you see here to my right, they were also a part of the NATO event. So that experience is ongoing. We've taken some of that experience, the experiences and the best practices there. We've looked at areas where we could improve, and we've improved upon those things. All of our training is rooted in the First and Fourth Amendments. It is important that our officers understand the First Amendment and the protection of First Amendment activity. The Chicago Police Department will not only allow everyone who comes here to express their First Amendment rights, but we will also protect their rights while they're doing it. We will protect them. It is important to understand that our job is to uphold the Constitution, and that is exactly what we're going to do. What we will not tolerate is vandalism to our city. What we will not tolerate is violent activity. If we see that, we will put an end to it quickly. Our officers have been dealing with protests since last year. Over 80 events that have occurred throughout this city. And I'm proud to say that our officers have responded very well. We have not seen any major incidents when our officers are engaging with those who are out protesting. We're in constant communication with our protest groups. We will continue to communicate with those groups because it's absolutely necessary for us to have an understanding of what it is that they expect from us and what we expect from them. So we've laid out clear plans on those expectations. So I want to be clear that this is not just about the Democratic National Convention. The Chicago Police Department has an obligation to the entire city of Chicago. Every single neighborhood we will be protecting. And we're looking at our manpower, we're looking at our allocations, and we want to make sure, and we will make sure that the neighborhoods who need us the most, we will be there for those neighborhoods. We will be there for the entire city of Chicago. So I don't want anyone to walk away from here believing that this safety plan is just about the DNC. It's about our city. Because we can't have a successful Democratic National Convention if we're not protecting the entire city as a whole. And we will continue to do that. Lastly, I'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the planning for the Democratic National Convention. I want to thank in advance our citizens of Chicago who at times, especially through a lot of these events, have had to deal with traffic, rerouting their days, finding alternative ways to get to and from. to work and their patience around all of these events. And we imagine that that's going to happen again during the DNC. That patience is what helps us keep the city safe. We're going to do every single thing that we can to make sure that this Democratic National Convention is safe and successful. We actually went out and visited the RNC just to see what was going on there, to see if there's something that we could take away to bring back here. We will be getting out information as it comes in, and if anything changes that we know the public needs to hear, we will make sure that we communicate those things out. So thank you to everyone who's been a part of this planning, and we appreciate your cooperation in all of it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Secret Service DNC Coordinator, Jeff Burnside.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. My name is Jeff Burnside, and I'm the Secret Service Coordinator for the 2024 Democratic National Convention, which has been designated as a national special security event. For more than a year, the U.S. Secret Service, along with our team here in Chicago, has been working with the Chicago Police Department and our other local, federal, and state partners to develop a security plan that will provide a safe and secure environment for not only those attending the convention, but the residents and guests of the city of Chicago. The purpose of today's briefing is to provide an overview of the security measures that will be in place here in Chicago during the convention. I'll begin with an overview of expected street impacts and then move into a brief review of the security impact maps. Both the maps and a detailed list of street impacts will be released following this press conference and available to the public on the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications website, chicago.gov/OEMC. For the street impacts, there will be temporary street closures that will begin near the United Center at approximately 7 p.m. on August 17th and remain in place throughout the duration of the convention and into the early morning hours of August 23rd. Temporary street closures will begin around the McCormick Place on August 16th at approximately 10 p.m. and again remain in place until the conclusion of events there. Prior to the security restrictions being in place, the public may notice security barriers and fencing being installed in these areas. Lane disruptions and some limited sidewalk impacts may occur during this time, and we ask the citizens for their patience and their grace while we work to ensure their safety. The public should also expect parking restrictions within these areas that will be posted in advance. And again, a complete list of the street closures and parking restrictions will be available online at chicago.gov/O.
So the White House is also giving a press update here in about 25 minutes. So at that point, I'm going to jump over there. I think we're getting the gist of what's going on here as far as planning in Chicago. So we'll carry on with this until we hear from the White House.
OEMC. I'll now move to a quick review of the security impact maps. And as a reminder, these maps will also be available online on the OEMC website. So referencing the maps, the areas that
I agree with that.
in yellow are vehicle screening areas. So within these areas, pedestrians are allowed to freely move about just as they would in any normal day. These areas are not bound by fences, but rather just a series of street closures. However, vehicles entering this area will be subject to screening. They must
Very
enter the area
interesting. I'm not
through
sure
a
why they
vehicle
would put this
checkpoint where
out.
they will briefly be screened by law enforcement. Bicycles are permitted in the vehicle screening area and are not required to go through a screening checkpoint. Near McCormick Place, ride shares, taxis, hot food delivery will be available in the vehicle screening perimeter. Those vehicles will need to go through one of our checkpoints indicated on the map, and so there may be some delays. We'll now move to the red shaded areas on the map, which is our pedestrian restricted area, or what we also refer to as the inner perimeter. At the United Center, access to the pedestrian restricted perimeter is restricted to those that are credentialed individuals and have a need to be there, such as convention attendees, staff, workers, volunteers, and public safety. Individuals will need to enter through a pedestrian checkpoint and be screened in order to enter the pedestrian restricted perimeter. Personal vehicles will not be allowed to enter the pedestrian restricted perimeter. Bicycles, scooters, golf carts will also be restricted in this area and not permitted. Residents of the Henry Horner homes will be able to access their homes, and their entry instructions will be communicated directly to them during our canvassing efforts, as well as through efforts by the Chicago Housing Authority. People will be able to access businesses within the outer perimeter or vehicle restricted area. All businesses within the pedestrian restricted area have been reserved for exclusive use by convention attendees and volunteers. Ride shares, taxis, and hot food deliveries will not be permitted within the pedestrian restricted area. Chicago Transit Authority buses will operate
Is it the best
normally
bet for them to be telling these
during their
routes?
normal hours of service.
What do you
However,
guys think about
routes
that?
within the vehicle exclusion zone will be impacted by
I'm
the
with
security
Danby. I'm
restrictions that are in
questioning this
place.
idea.
Riders are asked to expect delays and budget a little extra time for travel. We've been working very closely with CTA, and they will publish information and get it out to the public on alternate bus stops and that type of information. Deliveries, trash service, mail, the all-important Amazon deliveries, they will continue as normal. Those vehicles will be screened prior to entering the vehicle screening area. And so there might be some shifting of normal delivery times. And again, we ask for businesses and residents' patience as we work through that process. All deliveries that are entering the Secret Service perimeter must go through our commercial vehicle screening location, and that location has been communicated to the businesses and delivery companies that would be impacted. The commercial vehicle screening location will be open when our perimeters go into place, and it will remain open throughout the duration of the National Special Security event. Some delays could result as a result of these increased security measures. While security for an event of this size and scope will have an impact on city residents, the goal of the Secret Service and our partners is to provide the most secure environment while minimizing the daily disruptions to the city. In the event of an emergency, the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications app will be used to notify those in the area of a critical situation. We will continue to update the public on any potential changes to the security measures, and residents are encouraged to follow the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communication on social media and visit the city's website, again, at chicago.gov/OEMC. There they will find all of the information that they need on the full impacts of our security measures. In closing, I'd just like to thank all of our partners in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, all of our federal partners. This has truly been a collaborative effort. As the superintendent said, we've been working in close coordination for well over a year. And
I
it
got
has
pregnant.
truly been
Just saying.
the honor of my career to have this assignment and to work with our tremendous partners here in the city of Chicago. Now I would like to introduce the acting special agent in charge of the FBI's Chicago field office, Lucas Rothar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lucas Rothar, the acting special agent in charge of the Chicago division of the FBI. Upon the designation of a national special security event, the FBI is tasked with being the lead coordinator for intelligence relating to that event. For over the past year, the men and women of the FBI, along with our partners in law enforcement, have worked diligently to evaluate and assess all information and intelligence related to this event. And we've taken appropriate actions, and we shared that information with our law enforcement partners at the local, state, and federal levels. At this time, there are no known articulable threats to the DNC.
Oh boy.
However,
Those are big
as
words.
FBI Director Christopher Wray just mentioned yesterday in his testimony to Congress, we are living in an elevated threat environment. We do acknowledge the vast threats that we face as a nation, running from violent crime to international terrorism, domestic terrorism, and hate crimes, along with a host of other threats. The FBI remains steadfast in its commitment to meeting these challenges to protect the American public while upholding the Constitution. We pride ourselves on our ability to pivot to address new threats to
Pivot.
safeguard this nation and our communities. That has not, and it will not change. We're always adapting, we're always learning, and we're always adjusting our approach as we receive new information. And we will continue to do that throughout the DNC. The FBI is committed to devoting all resources as needed to combat any threats should they arise. Our special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff are prepared for this mission. We have a host of teams from across the country throughout the entire FBI that will assist us with these tasks. These personnel range from our hostage rescue team, our SWAT teams, our lab division, victim assistance, language specialists, along with a host of other people to help us accomplish these missions. However, one of the FBI's greatest strengths is our multi-agency approach to sharing of information. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our local, state, and federal partners, many of you who are here today with us. We endeavor in this work through these partnerships on an everyday basis. Some are through formalized relationships, such as our Joint Terrorism Task Force and our Violent Crime Task Force. Others are through less formalized. However, the result is the same. These partnerships are the key in the sharing of that intelligence in order to disrupt bad actors before they strike. And we're going to continue to rely on this process throughout the DNC and onwards and afterwards to ensure the protection of our communities. However, in order to do this most effectively, we do ask for a partnership with the public. We need that information from the public to help us do our jobs in the most effective, efficient manner possible. We often use the term of, if you see something, say something. I'd like to break that down for you. That is the key to our partnership. The public is a key partnership in disrupting all the threats that we endeavor to fight within the FBI and all of law enforcement. Every year, the FBI fields tens of thousands of tips from the public. Those tips can often make what makes a difference in preventing a crisis. All tips received are reviewed, evaluated, and prioritized for additional action. Again, these tips from the public help us to identify threats before they become a crisis. So what should people report to us? There is no such thing as something too insignificant to report. I would encourage everybody, if you see something suspicious, if something you feel is threatening, whether it's an online threat or comment, or it's whether you see something in person, please report it to law enforcement. If it's an emergency, an immediate threat to life, you should call 911. For any other reports that you'd like to make, any appropriate law enforcement agency will take that tip and we will share it amongst ourselves. If you'd like to submit a tip to the FBI, the public can call 1-800-CALL-FBI. or tips can be submitted online at tips.fbi.gov. Again, I thank the public for their cooperation in helping us endeavor to make this a safe event for all of our communities going forward, and again, for well into the future. And again, I want to stress the extreme appreciation that the FBI has for the Secret Service, the Chicago Police Department, and all of our local law enforcement and state law enforcement and federal law enforcement partners. With that, I will turn it over to the Executive Director of the OEMC, Mr. Jose Tirado.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Tirado, and I am the Executive Director of the Office of Emergency Management and Communications for the City of Chicago. OEMC is coordinating public safety efforts for the DNC and around the United Center, McCormick Place, and throughout the rest of the city. Our number one priority is public safety. Throughout the past year, OMC has been coordinating security and safety planning with the Secret Service, the Chicago Police Department, Chicago Fire Department, city agencies, as well as other partners and convention organizers to ensure the safety of all residents, visitors, and convention attendees. We have plans in place to handle the additional crowds and increased traffic citywide. The largest impacts will be felt around the United Center, McCormick Place, specifically due to street closures, parking restrictions, and added security measures. Businesses and homes will be accessible within those perimeters. Before heading out, please remember to plan ahead, allow extra travel time, consider alternate routes, and use public transportation if possible. OAMC, alongside other city departments and federal agencies, will continue to canvass the impacted areas to engage with residents and businesses to answer any of their questions. This includes the areas around the United Center, McCormick Place, the Central Business District, the West Loop, and the South Loop. OMC's website is chicago.gov/OMC. It contains information related to public safety, street closures, traffic reroutes, parking restrictions, emergency notifications, and much more. Throughout the convention, OMC will be pushing out important notifications. In addition to Notify Chicago and ShyBiz alerts, we have developed a dedicated text alert for the convention for DNC 2024. In order to opt in, you can text DNC to the following number, 226-787-226-787. And I'll say that again. In order to opt in for the DNC 2024 text alert, type in DNC to the following number, 226-787. The best way to receive all information is to download the Chicago OEMC app, as you've already heard from everyone who's been working with us. I could tell everyone right now, I would download that app immediately. Additionally, to enhance our monitoring of citywide events,
that sounds
OMC
scary.
will also be activating the City Emergency Operations Center, staffed by local, state, and federal partners. While we make every effort on behalf of the city to keep residents and visitors safe, we remind everyone that they also have a role to play in our community. We encourage the public to please report any suspicious activity by calling 911. Simply said, if you see something, say something. And I'll say that again. If you see something, say something. Do not hesitate to call 911.
Very
Look forward to
familiar with
ensuring a
that
safe
term.
convention for all
Very.
and for the city. Thank you very much. I will hand it now back to Derek from the Secret Service.
We will now open the floor up for questions.
Just a reminder, just please lead with your name and outlet, and then we're gonna try to just do one question and get follow-ups later because there's so many. AP.
The protesters have indicated that they're in talks to move closer to the United Center. And I don't know who would be the best for that, but where those talks are and approximately where they would be.
Thank you. Tom Karine, Commissioner, Chicago Department of Transportation. One of the functions of our department is to issue permits for use of the public right-of-way. So the city of Chicago and all the partners here today are fully committed to allowing individuals and groups to exercise their First Amendment rights safely. As you referenced, there is litigation in the court, so I can't get into specifics about certain assemblies or protest marches, but I can confirm that we are working in a format through the court to allow demonstrators to protest within sight and sound of the United Center. And as we get those details finalized,
It's horrible,
we'll
isn't it,
come
Pam?
back and share those.
Just
publicly.
horrible.
Craig up front.
Craig Walling, C7 Chicago. Maybe this goes to Chief Snelling or maybe the Secret Service. I know you sent representatives up to the RNC to observe up there. What was learned from up there, and how will that be applied here for the DNC? And if it's any changes?
Well, what I can tell you is that we saw a lot of great things, and we saw some things that maybe we can apply here. However, the planning that we've been doing here has been great. So right now, are we looking at any major changes? No. But like I said, again, as we go along, we assess situations. We want to make sure that everything is safe. And if at any point or any time we think we need to make some changes for the safety of the city, we will do so. So the partnership, again, has been great. We saw some great things when we were out there, and we see some great things here. And 3 words, we're ready. We are ready. Okay.
Echo the second row.
We saw in Milwaukee.
Sorry, Craig. Gia.
Wonder what happened there, Ruthie? So we will be listening to the White House press briefing in about 5 minutes. I can see you in chat. Yep.
No, there are no adjustments that need to be made at this time. Basically, here we have outside agencies who are going to come in. Most of them are right here from Illinois, and then we have some from Milwaukee who are coming in. They will be assigned to areas where we need help with infrastructure. They will not be in the neighborhoods. They will not be in areas where we know there's a possibility that they would have to take some type of police action. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't have to where they are, but this will free up our officers, our Chicago police officers, to be in more volatile areas, right? Because this is our city, and our officers are bound by particular rules, regulations, and laws. At the same time, all of those officers who are coming in to the city of Chicago, they will be getting 8 to 12 hours of training on some of our policies, training, and the expectations of our city. So we have a really good plan in place for that, to make sure that they're secure and that our officers are responding to those more volatile situations in the city. Just in case.
First row here.
I ain't gonna let you put on there daily news. I'm not sure which department can handle this, maybe the superintendent, but what kind of physical barriers or markers will there be on the street so that the citizens know what are the parameters around the DNC?
So I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to reference the maps as we kind of talk through this. So in the yellow areas, that is not bound by any type of fencing. That will be a series of street closures that will be well marked for motorists so that they will see those. The red areas will be bound by fencing, and pedestrians will be able to see that. It will be clearly marked. It will be clearly visible. There will be no confusion about what is a restricted area and what is not a restricted area.
Or second, right, Julie.
Well, here's what I can tell you, because it's unpredictable who will arrive here. We're willing to meet with any protest group to have that conversation, to talk about expectations, to explain what it is that we expect of them. And because I think that clear communication gives us an idea of how they can move forward successfully and having their voices heard. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to help keep our city safe. And it also allows us to know and understand where we need to deploy resources. So any conversation to be had, we're willing to have those conversations.
Third row on the end.
Good morning, Michelle Gallardo with ABC7. My question is for both Director Tirado and for the Secret Service. You've discussed the desire to minimize impacts to both businesses and residents, both on the inner perimeter and in the yellow zone. And
So the White House has bumped up the time by 15 minutes again. They've been doing this for the last few hours. They keep bumping it up. So I'm not really sure what's going to go on with this presser, but I do believe it's going to be interesting.
So one of the subcommittees that we set up very early on in this process is our Community Impact Private Sector Subcommittee. And they've been working very diligently since last August on outreach efforts. And there's several prongs and phases to that. But they've held a multitude of outreach events. We've reached over 1,000 organizations throughout this process. In April, the Secret Service partnered with our friends at OEMC, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, and a multitude of other Chicago agencies, and actually went door-to-door canvassing in the areas, actually a much larger area than what you see depicted on these maps, letting people know that things were coming, that where they could go to get information, deriving them to the OEMC website so that they understand that that is a trusted source of information and updates. We have attended community meetings where we've answered questions about impacts to bus routes and public transportation. And some of those meetings that we held early on, quite frankly, we have to go back to those groups because we just didn't have the information that they needed at that time. And so we're in a full court press from now until the end of the convention. And this doesn't stop on the 19th. This is a continuing effort through the end of the convention because we owe the residents and the citizens of the city of Chicago that to make sure that their questions are answered, that they have the access to the city services that they need, to prepare them for what type of disruptions or delays that they might expect so that they could adjust their schedules accordingly.
I'm sorry, give me 1 second. So just to touch on the question, right? Jeff did an amazing job, but the reason I'm going to introduce Ivan Capifali is because he's also boots on the ground to get into specifics on how OEMC, Secret Service, CPD, Community Engagement for the Mayor's Office has been pushing out this message since April, April and March. I'm going to bring him up. This is Ivan Capifali, first deputy for the ACP.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for being here. My name is Ivan Capifali, and I'm the acting commissioner for the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, also known as BACP. BACP in-person canvassing efforts included businesses and residents within the newly announced perimeter and those near the venues. Additionally, BACP set up a phone bank and has been actively reaching out to businesses that were missed during the in-person canvassing. Since April, BACP has reached out to almost 900 businesses around the United Center and nearly 500 businesses near McCormick Place. I want to confirm that BACP will be part of the canvassing efforts that are occurring tomorrow. Additionally, BACP has shared DNC information through emails and our social media pages, engaged with delegate agencies, elected officials, industry partners, and more. We created a frequently asked questions toolkit in collaboration with the Office of Emergency Management and distributed it widely. Lastly, BACP has been urging businesses to enroll in CHIBIS alerts, which provides vital text and email notifications tailored for the business community. Since launching our outreach efforts in April, we've experienced a 17 growth in business, in subscribers to ICKEDMEL alerts, demonstrating the effectiveness of our initiatives. I want to thank our partners and business community and preparing for the convention. Thank you everyone for being here today.
And we'll be having an advisory come out later about the canvassing. Marianne?
Thank you, Marianne Laker from ABC5. In Milwaukee, the mayor provided daily updates at 6:30 a.m. every day, and I'm wondering, Mayor, if you anticipate doing that, or if someone else will be offering sort of an update of what happened so that the media is informed of how everything is going daily?
I don't want to speak for the mayor, but the Secret Service and CPD will do a daily presser. We're still working on that time, but it'll either be in the late morning or the late afternoon.
And you know where that would be?
We're still working that out. We're hoping to have it at OEMC.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Just to get back to this question, that will be at OMC. We will have a daily one. We just haven't figured out the time slot yet. But also, just so everyone's aware, we will also, as a city, have internal conversations at 7:30 and 15:30. That's just for informational. So as far as all our city agencies, we communicate with each other on a daily basis, 365 days a year at 7:30 and 15:30. That will not change during the DNC, and it will not change moving forward. In reference to having a daily conversation with the media or a brief out, that'll also be coming out at OMC as well.
Jeff Arnold, News perhaps for the governor or for the mayor, with the anticipated uptick in buses coming from the southern border, how do you anticipate handling that, the traffic of new arrivals going to be?
Well, there's been a very strong partnership between the state of Illinois and the county of Cook to prepare ourselves for that act if it were to take place. We have right now currently roughly 5,600 new arrivals that are still in our shelters. Our collective resources are prepared for as many as 15,000. But we certainly hope that, Governor Abbott finds Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior and don't do that. All right, thank you.
Sir.
Is the Secret Service and the FBI monitoring CPD members who are admitted or alleged member of far-right extremist groups?
Yeah, so we're not going to comment on the existence of any pending investigations, whether they have one or not. What I can tell you is the FBI is committed to the investigation of all individuals relating to possibility of any domestic terrorism relations or any hate crimes or any other civil rights violations.
Second row.
Hi, Governor. You said earlier this week you had not received any materials about possibly being vice president. Is that still true? And can you confirm that the Harris campaign called you yesterday?
The Harris campaign did not call me yesterday. I have had a number of conversations with people I do regularly with the campaign. And as you know, I've been traveling the country to promote the Biden-Harris ticket, and now, of course, the Harris led ticket, rather. And so that's what's been going on over the last few days. And as I say, I don't want to talk about any private conversations I've had, but I will say that I have said directly to the vice president that I'm going to do everything and anything that is necessary to make sure that we beat Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who, like me, doesn't use periods between the. Sorry, some of you will get that. And to make sure that we're communicating across the country the message of hope that comes from a Harris candidacy and her victory in November.
Thank you. And on the vetting materials issue?
Yeah, as I said, I'm not going to talk about any conversations that we've had. I haven't talked to the campaign the way you've described. Just spoke with Vice President Harris.
You interested in being VP?
I think all of you have heard me say that I really have been honored to have been elected twice as governor of the state of Illinois. I really enjoy the work, sometimes very challenging, but always the opportunity to serve the 13 million people of our state. And so, there's not much that would pull me away from that job.
But Governor, you said two things. You said you haven't talked to them and then you did talk to her. So which one is it?
Sorry, I think the question was, had I spoken with them in the last day? Did I get a call? And the answer is no.
I didn't mean this. Have you spoken to the Harris campaign?
Well, sure. I don't know anybody who's involved in Democratic politics that isn't talking to the Harris campaign. If you have the opportunity to, so that's the answer. I mean, I'm, as you know, I know people who work on the campaign, and I'm involved in transmitting the message of the campaign. So, excited about the next 100 days.
Well, more directly, have you been contacted about becoming vice president?
Again, I'm not going to talk about that. I can tell you that, I'm going to campaign. Whatever happens in this process that I understand is going on, my job is to make sure that we win in November. So I'm going to work hard to do that, as I have for, the last year and a half of this campaign.
All right, we're drifting way off topic. Any more questions on the DNC? Whitney?
I just wanted to check back in on the mutual aid question. I think before, when we had a press conference, you were anticipating bringing in maybe ballpark 400 mutual aid officers in the aftermath of the attempted assassination of former President now candidate Donald Trump, as well as the volatility in Washington just yesterday with the Netanyahu visit. Are you expecting to bring in more mutual aid from outside agencies?
Right now, what we've looked at is we've looked at our officers. We've looked at scheduling around our officers, day off cancellations, extensions of tour, and we have more than 400 coming in. We have upwards of 500 coming in, and we, based on our assessment, we have a very good complement of officers who will be out there. They're highly trained. They will be responding professionally, and we're going to make sure that as we work with our partners and with the partnership that we have along with our federal partners, we will make whatever adjustments we need to make as things change. And as you said, we've seen some things happen during campaigning. If we see some of those things, we will make the adjustment, and we do have the manpower to deal with it.
אני לא בצלחות, אני מדברת בתוך הבית הלבן, זאת אומרת לך לא מה לדבר, ואת ממשיכה, אני לא יכולה, אני לא שומעת, זה היה מקוטע. ואז אני כתבתי לה בוואטסאפ, אני לא הרמתי את הטון שנייה.
We've got the White House briefing. You guys think they're going to talk to her? Hi. And here's very brief talk.
אני עמדתי לידם, שהם ניסיתי לברר את זה. אני רוצה להבין מה אותם, דורית, אבל למה שאומרת על ילדים שהם לא נכונים? עושה את זה, יש לך תיקור, את שמה לב? אני אומרת שאני צריכה, אני לא צורה, נכון, אני מדברת על העניין, אני פוגעת בתיקור, אני פוגעת בדורית, אני פוגעת בתוך הנקבים, בתוך העצבים, לא, נו, סליחה, אני מדברת בצרכות, אני אומרת לתום, אני לא מכירה
So I'll just keep it on mute until she shows up. I'm glad she finally came. Like some of the comments, they kept delaying this and delaying this and delaying this. So I think it might be interesting what we're about to hear. Oh, yeah. Hey, Harley, good to see you. Yeah, a lot of people are making comments about this briefing, so we'll see what she has to say. Captain America, Mexi. Yeah. You know, it's pretty bad. And this is a lot of the comments that I'm seeing. You've got a spokesperson coming out and nobody is expecting truth to come out of her mouth. It's like, what? One woman is like, yeah, I like my BS before or around 2:00, please. No later. It makes me crampy. And it was a guy. Oh, James, thank you for that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, what's going on here? The spinny wheel of death. Yeah, thank you so much, James. That's so awesome. I really appreciate it. See if I can get into chat to see who's going to be. Who have we got? Harley Girl, welcome. We got Mel, Angel Cruz, I think, Trish Cow and Crow. I'm sorry, not Cow, Crow, and Liz W. So welcome, welcome. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. Oh, Lordy, Lordy. There was 617 homicides and 2,450 hootings across Chicago throughout 2023, according to the Chicago Police Department. Wow. I say thank you very much. I can't get over your cat. Okay, so maybe they allowed everybody to start streaming this and they're not going to show up for another hour? How bizarre, how bizarre. I'm going to turn them on again. I want to hear what everyone has to say about this.
Yeah, I feel like it's been like that a little bit, yeah. And then if they did it, stop and go back.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not making sense of anything either, Pam.
I'm not gonna get better. I just feel like you just learn to realize. If I had to
I wonder what the hell's going on behind closed doors in this building. Like, what's going on?
Well, this is the right other thing.
Nope, nobody fell down the stairs and hurt himself.
Which is great. She's had me every day.
While prepping. Oh, James. Wow. You're so good to us. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. So we got Darren, Shane, Danielle, Demelo, Tina Kerr, and Cream Pop. Welcome, you guys. God, James, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, Pam, do you have everything turned on so you can accept memberships? Welcome, everyone. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. You do have it on? Opal, Amber Riot, Language of Horses, Jonathan, and Ladybird. Oh, isn't that something? Are you sure you got that turned on? Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Double check that, Pam.
Most of the day yesterday, the briefing, so I didn't really try to catch them when it happened. I don't play it, sorry. I don't know why.
Yeah, welcome one and all. Welcome to the think tank. Welcome to all the new channel members. Absolutely. Subscribe, like, share, hang around. It's a great spot, if I do say so myself. We got great people in here. We're small but mighty, let me tell you. Well, what the heck is happening here? Yay, Hardy girl. Make sure all of our new members, I'll put the banner on, and the email address is in there. If you email, we will get you hooked up to Discord, and the Discord is awesome. It's got all different case information, many, like I'm talking many. We've got pictures of different places everybody lives. We've got movie nights. It's a great community. A little bit freer. You can speak like adults if you feel the need. You won't get booted out like YouTube likes to do. There we are. Thank you, Maxie. Yeah, it's a great spot. Well, what do you guys think? What's going on behind the scenes? Why is this taking so long? Yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? I love it too. I mean, when we're not streaming, everybody's pretty much over there chit-chatting and playing. It's as educational and as fun as you want it. I didn't see that, James. You're so funny. Very hard to go, oh, you can't say that while the host is laughing their asses off. I know, right, Maxie? Oh, my word. Oh, James. You're a funny, funny boy, you are. Oh, okay. Yeah, YouTube, like, it's sent out randomly. We don't get to choose. It just does it all on its clean for YouTube. All good. Is this how slow everything moves in the White House? Just when you got a slow old leader, you got a slow old staff. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Thank you, Steve.
Well, I'm definitely glad Harley got one. We see you all the time. I love to have you. As well as everybody we haven't met. Looking forward to meeting everyone. Yes, go like Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, for 30 seconds. During the commercial break, in which the events have worked.
Do you think we'll ever learn the actual truth about what happened on July 13th? Or is it just going to continue being what it is, kind of an ish show?
Now?
Yeah. That's kind of what I thought.
That's hard. That's
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Oh my God. What is it?
Yeah. I agree with you guys. We don't usually follow any kind of politics on the think tank, but what's going on right now is beyond political. Well, it is. Anytime somebody is, hot, and I mean, almost right in the face, it's now true crime. Yeah. That's what I think too, James. Same thing will happen. Banner back on for a minute. Oh. It is, James. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I have so many questions about that. I got a hold of Maxie and I started, and she's like, "Holy, girl, give your brain a rest." It's like I need to know what the hell went on there. But yeah, the person won't. I don't believe. Okay, guys, here we go. I'm gonna put my mute on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, bear with me. I have a few things at the top. So I want to start by saying that what the country witnessed last night was historic. We saw the leadership we always see from Joe Biden. We saw a man who, as he has always done, put country first. Surrounded by his family, you heard the president say, "I revere this office, but I love my country more." He went on to say, "The defense of democracy is more important than any title. I draw strength and find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. And I have decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That is the best way to unite our nation." This is a selfless act, something that very few politicians would ever do. President Biden will go down in history as one of the nation's greatest presidents, accomplishing more in nearly 4 years than most presidents do in 8 years. To quote him again, "I have given my heart and my soul to our nation like so many others have, and I have been blessed 1,000,000 times in return with the love and support of the American people." He made clear last night that over the next 6 months, he will be focused on doing his job as President of the United States and building on his historic results for the American people. That is his focus. And I will end by saying that I am so proud to work for this man who has served his country for more than 50 years with honor and dignity. And I look forward to continue to work with him again for ahead in the next several months. Today, the Department of Homeland Security released additional data on the impacts of the executive action President Biden announced on June 4th. Since then, encounters at the border between ports of entry have dropped more than 55%. Average daily encounters are now lower than they were at the end of the previous administration and lower than at this point back in 2019. But we know the only way to bring lasting solutions to secure the border and to begin to fix the broken immigration system is to pass the bipartisan border security agreement. Sadly, congressional Republicans have decided to put partisan politics ahead of our national security and twice voted against the bipartisan agreement and badly needed resources to hire additional border patrol agents and fentanyl detection technology at the border. In the absence of legislative action, the Biden-Harris administration has taken decisive actions to secure the border. Recently, the administration has taken action to hold criminal organizations accountable, including sanctions against different gangs and smuggling organizations that are responsible for various criminal activities. That includes human smuggling and trafficking, gender-based violence, and money laundering. We have also taken concrete steps to make our immigration system more fair and more just and to keep families together. That is why in August, eligible spouses of U.S. citizens and their children who have lived here for 10 years or more will be able to apply for legal status while remaining in the United States with their families. We're also helping young people who have been educated in the U.S., including Dreamers and DACA recipients, receive work visas more quickly. These actions will help more young people use their talents to enrich our communities and strengthen our economy. This administration will continue taking action to secure our border and fix our broken immigration system. Now, when President Biden took office, we were in the midst of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. But as the president said last night during his Oval Office address, and as today's GDP report makes clear, the United States has the strongest economy in the world. This did not happen by accident. Under the leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris, we saw the economy grow a strong 2.8% last quarter, with business investments up more than 5%. Nearly 16 million jobs have been created and wages are up higher than before the pandemic, with inflation down to 3%. But as the president said, we have more work to do. Over the next 6 months, the president and vice president will keep fighting to lower costs for hard-working families, from lowering health care and housing costs to making billionaires pay their fair share and cutting taxes for families with the child tax credit. While congressional Republicans side with special interests and threaten Social Security and Medicare, the president and vice president will continue fighting for the middle class. Today, we are praying for the thousands of Americans under mandatory evacuation orders out west as widespread wildfires burn hundreds of thousands of acres across Oregon, California, and elsewhere. We're grateful for the brave firefighters and first responders who are working to protect people and save lives. We urge everyone in the affected areas to remain vigilant and heed the warnings of local officials, especially those who have been ordered to evacuate. And the president has been briefed on the fires, and we are in close touch with the governor's offices in affected states to ensure they have all that they need. White House and federal officials are also in close contact with state and local officials on the front lines of these fires, and 6,800 federal personnel from the U.S. Forest Service and the Department of Interior are on the ground, helping to fight the blazes and keep people safe. The Department of Defense has also mobilized 4 of its C-130 modular airborne firefighting systems to support fire suppression's effort. FEMA has also issued several fire management assistance grants to help reimburse states for firefighting costs. As always, we stay ready to provide further support as needed. And finally, on Monday, Iowa's extreme abortion ban will take effect, banning care before a lot of women even know that they are pregnant. Iowa will be the 22nd state with an abortion ban in effect. All of these bans imposed by the Republican elected officials put women's health and lives in jeopardy. The president and the vice president have been clear this should never happen in America, yet this is exactly what is happening in states across the country since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And it's not stopping at the state level. Republican elected officials in Congress have proposed four national abortion bans while refusing to protect nationwide access to IVF and contraception. President Biden and Vice President Harris believe that women in every state must have the right to make deeply personal decisions about their health care. They continue to call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade into federal law and fight efforts by Republican elected officials to undermine our fundamental freedoms. And with that, I will turn it over to the Admiral John Kirby, who's here to take questions about the Prime Minister of Israel's visit and meeting with the President today and take
Afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
As you all know, the President and the Prime Minister are meeting right now in the Oval Office. There's a lot on the agenda, but first and foremost, we'll be discussing how deeply and how strongly the President feels, we feel, that we've got to get this hostage deal in place so we can get a ceasefire also in place, at least for phase one, for that those first 6 weeks. There are gaps that remain, and our team continues to work with our counterparts in the region to see if we can't close those gaps. We believe that they are of a nature where they can be closed and that we can achieve a deal. But it's going to require, as it always does, some leadership, some compromise, and an effort to get there. The President will be reaffirming for Prime Minister Netanyahu that he believes we need to get there, and we need to get there soon. Today is the 293rd day that these hostages have been held captive by Hamas. And you just have to assume that it is the most horrific of circumstances. Sadly, we know that not all of them are alive. Still hostages, still need to get home to their families. 293 days. There ought not to be a 294th. And we're going to keep working on that. I do anticipate that the two leaders will also have a chance to talk about other substantive issues in terms of the blue line up at the north and making sure we don't see an escalation of the conflict between Israel and Lebanon, and make sure that we're providing opportunities for both Israeli and Lebanese citizens to return to their homes, as well as, of course, the critical need for stability in the West Bank. We're still seeing violence in the West Bank that the president has been absolutely steadfast calling out as unacceptable. They'll also discuss the United States' ironclad commitment, of course, to Israel's security, including countering the very serious threats that Iran and its proxy groups continue to demonstrate throughout the region. The president and the prime minister, of course, after their meeting today in the Oval, will have a chance to meet with families of the Americans that are being held hostage by Hamas. This will be this president's second in-person meeting with these families. But as you all know, we have kept up a regular drumbeat of interaction with them since the 7th of October. Jake Sullivan's met with them 10, 12 times, something like that. And other members of the team have also kept in touch with them to make sure that they know everything that we're doing to get their loved ones home. Just quickly before we go to questions, a quick word on Venezuela. We support the peaceful elections that we expect and hope will come on Sunday. Elections that will reflect the will and the aspirations of the Venezuelan people for a more democratic, stable, and prosperous future. Any political repression and violence is unacceptable. And of course, regardless of who wins, we encourage both candidates to commit to a peaceful outcome and to work together for the good of all Venezuelans. With that,
Go ahead, Zeke.
Thanks, John. First, in light of the president meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu right now, does the president believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to get a hostage deal, that given his political consideration at home in Israel, that he's actually capable and willing to bridge those gaps that you say remain?
Yes, yes, and yes. He has said so publicly himself, Zeke. He wants to get the hostages home. The Israelis, the government, Prime Minister Netanyahu, has been working with us to try to get that deal over the finish line. That said, as I mentioned at the top, there's still some gaps that remain, and we're going to be talking to the Prime Minister today about closing those gaps.
I just said, on a broader note, the president mentioned last night that he plans to spend the next 6 months his time in office focused on some foreign policy issues. How does the president's announcement change what the White House, what the NSC has planned for the balance of the year through January 20th in terms of the issues with the president, travel by the president when we get to Africa? What were the to-do list of things that maybe had been planned for the second term that he now has less than 6 months to get done?
Well, look, now that he's not running for re-election, certainly you can expect that there'll be opportunities on the calendar that may not have been before. And so we're all exploring what those opportunities can look like in terms of advancing his foreign policy agenda and national security opportunities here and around the world. But I don't have anything on the schedule to speak to now. But I mean, stay tuned. I think there'll be some opportunities that the president is going to want to explore. Look, I mean, still got a war in Ukraine, still got a war in Gaza, still got climate change to deal with. Still got a very restless Indo-Pacific. I mean, I could go on and on. There's plenty of things for the national security team to try to continue to get done.
John, we heard from the Vice President earlier with comments, strong comments related to the vandalism and the protests that we saw yesterday. We haven't heard yet from the President or for the White House at large. Do you condemn what you saw yesterday? How do you characterize the protests, including what we saw at Union Station?
Well, we did put out a statement last night from the White House, but absolutely condemn any violence in protest activity. I mean, it's a First Amendment right to peacefully protest. We fully support that. We know that there are strong views about what's going on in Gaza. And some of those views are in opposition to some of the policies that we're pursuing. We get it. That's democracy. But when it turns violent and when you burn an American flag and pull it down off a U.S. government site, that's just absolutely unacceptable. And obviously we condemn all that.
Are these protests pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel? How do you characterize what we're seeing?
I think it's a little bit of all those things. I mean, I can't speak for the protesters. Obviously, I don't share their views. But obviously, they took great exception to the Prime Minister speaking on Capitol Hill. And as I said, many of them have taken exception with our policies with respect to Gaza.
Today, we heard from one of the family members who's going to be meeting with both the Prime Minister and the President a short time from now, Aviva Siegel. She was a former hostage of Hamas. She says, I want to ask President Biden if Bibi is not able or willing to agree to the ceasefire and hostage deal to bring the Americans home. Is there anything more that President Biden is prepared to do unilaterally to try to bring those hostages home?
I wouldn't get into hypothesizing and speculating about options one way or the other. We want to get all the hostages home, clearly the Americans in particular. And that's why this deal is so important, Peter. And we are close. We are closer now, we believe, than we've been before. The gaps are closable, no question about that. And we believe, the president believes, that getting that hostage deal in place, getting that 6-week ceasefire, that's the best way to get all these loved ones back with their families.
Thank you, Karine. Thanks, John. Did the U.S. find any of Netanyahu's remarks yesterday to be false or misleading?
I'm not going to parse everything he said or do a fact check here from this podium. He should speak for himself about what his views are.
He should, but he had a powerful stage, a joint address before Congress. Do you agree with assertions that Iran financially backs some of the protesters, that if there are Palestinians in Gaza who aren't getting enough food, it's not because Israel is blocking it, as 2 examples?
So on the first example, we've said ourselves, the Director of National Intelligence came out publicly and said that we do know that Iran has been funding and encouraging some of the protest activity here in the United States, some of it. We do not believe that all the protest activity out there on a daily basis is being fully funded by Iran. There's a lot of organic concern out there in the American people about what's going on in the Middle East. And most of these protests are formed and fashioned in that regard. On the second question, there has been a steady increase of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza. The problem isn't getting it to Gaza right now. The problem is getting it around Gaza. And one of the reasons why it's so dang difficult to move things around inside Gaza is because there's a war going on and bombs are dropping. And regrettably, in the conduct of some of their recent operations, the Israeli military has, in fact, not on purpose. We have no reason to believe they did this deliberately, but there has been accidental strikes on some of the trucks and the convoys that have been moving around. So it's not one or the other. There's a lot of reasons why it's not moving around, and some of that is, of course, the military activity of the Israelis inside Gaza.
And then now that the vice president is the likely Democratic nominee, has she communicated with the president whether a Harris administration's Israel policy would be the same or different as his?
You would have to talk to the vice president's office and the campaign for that. I would just, before I leave that though, just want to remind, she's been a full partner in our policies in the Middle East, particularly with our policies towards Israel and the war in Gaza, a full partner, been involved in nearly every conversation that the president has had with the prime minister, and very much engaged throughout.
Okay, before I get to my questions, can I just a quick follow-up on that? Can you explain to the American people who might think it just looks odd that she is having her own private meeting with the prime minister separate from the president that suggests that they aren't speaking with both worlds?
I reckon if she was here, she'd be in the room right now, but she's not physically here. There's nothing unusual about that. And Vice President has, and I fully expect over the next 6 months, will continue to have meetings of her own with foreign leaders. She's met privately with President Zelensky as well and others.
It was 20 days ago that the administration first said that they were really optimistic about finding, really closing the deal. Has nothing changed in 20 days? Is that still where we are?
I wouldn't say nothing's changed.
What are the remaining gaps? What are the sticking points?
Yeah, I'm not going to negotiate in public. I wouldn't say nothing's changed. I mean, there's the last 20 days that you talk about, and we've been working really, really hard to try to get those gaps closed. There's still more work to be done. But we believe, as I said earlier, we're closer now than we've been before. And we think it's absolutely achievable to get this over the finish line.
Sort of following up on Weeja's point, there was one other thing that the Prime Minister said yesterday that's getting a lot of attention is that the conflict has had one of the lowest ratios of combatant to non-combatant casualties in the history of urban warfare. Obviously, our own State Department has found it reasonable to assess that the Israelis' actions at times have been inconsistent with international law. So who is correct here? And is the United States comfortable with the ratio of deaths between
Again,
combatants?
I'm not going to go line by line through the Prime Minister's speech and debate it here from the White House podium. He should speak for his comments. He should speak for his views. What I can do is speak for ours. And the right number of civilian casualties is 0. And there has been too many civilian casualties in this fighting in Gaza. And as I just indicated in my previous answer, there continue to be civilian casualties in this war in Gaza. There continues to be desperate need for food, water, medicine, because it's a combat zone in many places. And we need to bring the war to an end. And one of the principal things that the president's going to talk to the Prime Minister about today is how we get there. How do we end this war? And the best way, in his view, is to get this deal in place. Get a 6-week ceasefire. Get phase 1 going so you negotiate to phase 2, get a cessation of hostilities, and more critically, get those hostages home.
Thanks, Karine. Thanks, Admiral. You mentioned in your topper the word compromises. Does the president believe that specifically that Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to make compromises to achieve a ceasefire deal? And it's not just Hamas. And also, what are those compromises that Netanyahu would have to make? If so?
Both sides have to make compromises. And because we still have gaps that haven't been closed, I think you can surmise from that there are still compromises that need to be made. The Israelis already have made many compromises to get us to this point. Hamas, through their interlocutors, have made compromises to get us to this point. And yet we're still not there. So there's still a need for compromise.
And will the president be saying to Prime Minister Netanyahu, you need to make compromises?
Well, we're going to do a readout, and we'll tell you how the meeting went after it's over. But as I said in the opening statement, this will be a prime topic of discussion, that it's time now to get these compromises in place. It's time now to get the negotiation in place and get the hostages home. It's time to end the war.
Thank you. How does the administration reconcile the comments that the president has made about the fact that Hamas has been decimated, its military objectives achieved, as he said some weeks ago, and the fact that we heard the prime minister again reiterate that he wants total victory? How do you all reconcile those two visions?
I don't think they need to be reconciled. I think both things can be true. We do believe that from a military perspective, Hamas has been very, very badly beaten and denigrated. No question about that. Doesn't mean they've been eliminated. They still have leadership in place. They still can direct operations. They still have fighters at their beck and call. And we're seeing that every day. And we also still believe that they need to be defeated, that the threat to Israel needs to be eliminated from Hamas, and that whatever the post-war situation looks like, it can't end with Hamas being in control over Gaza. So I don't think that the two things are necessarily irreconcilable or at odds with one another.
Thank you. 2 questions. To what extent the war in Gaza has impacted the president's ambitious project IMEC corridor, and is I-2U2 being discussed today in the bilateral meeting?
For the IMEC corridor, I think it's too soon to know whether there's going to be a big impact on that. The president's absolutely still committed to it. We've still got the teams pulling together and working on that. It's got great promise for infrastructure and investment opportunities across that whole corridor, not only just for the movement of commerce, but the jobs that it will create just in its establishment.
And secondly, President's another key initiative has been Quad. Right? Is President still committed to attending the Quad summit being hosted by India this year?
We're still committed to there being a Quad Leaders Summit this year, but there's nothing on the calendar right now for it.
Thank you. John, the meeting with the hostage families essentially that you referenced, can you just give us a sense of what message the president and the prime minister want to bring to those families? What are they going to say?
I won't speak for the prime minister, but the president intends to tell them how seriously he's still committed to getting this deal in place and getting their loved ones home. He's going to tell them that we're going to maintain the contact with them that we have had, that there's not going to be a gap in communication as we get closer here, hopefully to the end, and that he's not going to rest until all their loved ones are back.
The pool was in the Oval Office briefly for the beginning of their meeting, and the two men were friendly and cordial, and
President Biden was joking about how old he was when he first had a meeting with a previous prime minister. But we know that there have been tensions between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden. Can you talk a little bit about the state of their relationship right now?
It's a healthy relationship. And by healthy, I mean they're not going to agree on everything. They haven't through the long political lives that both of them have enjoyed, always agreed on everything. They come from two different political traditions, but they know one another. I believe I'm speaking for President Biden that he's very comfortable in the relationship that he has with the Prime Minister and the ability that he has. He would do it anyway, but certainly with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the ability that he has to be candid and honest and lay it all out there, and he'll do that today.
Did the president watch the prime minister's speech yesterday, or see anything that he?
I don't know if he watched it. I don't know that.
And you didn't? Do you have a sense of his reaction?
I don't.
Okay. And yeah. Thanks.
That was easy.
Venezuela. Do you think that Maduro has the ability to kind of fully rig the election, or do you think that it's more likely that he would just contest the results?
It's difficult to know exactly how this is going to play out. So I can't really answer that specifically. But the reason I mentioned it in my opening statement is to make it clear to Mr. Maduro that we're watching. We're watching closely. They need to be free and fair elections, free of repression, free of voter intimidation. And again, no matter who wins, our expectation is that the winner is going to continue to look after democratic institutions in Venezuela.
So if the opposition does win, are you concerned about violence that might break out?
If we weren't concerned about the possibility, I wouldn't have mentioned it in the opening statement.
Thank you. Admiral, two questions on Iran. How is POTUS Biden going to deal with Iran? I mean, which aspects of dealing with Iran is he going to prioritize in the next 6 months in office? And which one of them would he be recommending to be POTUS Harris if and when she gets to the White House again?
She's already at the White House. She's already a key partner in our foreign policy objectives.
Commander-in-Chief.
I would tell you that you're going to continue to see over the next 6 months the same focus by this administration and this team, which of course includes the vice president, on holding Iran accountable for all their destabilizing activities, support to the Houthis, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, the merchant attacks that they're allowing the Houthis to continue to perpetrate and that they're perpetrating themselves in the Gulf region, as well as their support to Russia and Russia's war in Ukraine. I could go on and on. We have sanctioned Iran some 600 different times. Just in the last 3.5 years of this administration, we'll continue to hold them accountable. That will be a steady focus for the president.
Israeli Prime Minister yesterday labeled those part of the protesters as Iran's useful idiots. What is the administration's method of dealing with them? I mean, what is it?
Well, first of all, that's not a phrase we would use. As I mentioned, I think, to Peter's question, we know that Iran certainly has tried to meddle here. They've tried to sow discord. They've obviously contributed to some funding of some protesters, but I think to paint everybody with that brush is unfortunate and not an accurate reflection. Most of the protest activity here in the United States is peaceful. Most of it is, by the vast majority of it, is organic. It comes from people who have real concerns, and that's what a democracy is all about.
And do you agree with the Prime Minister's assertion that basically Israel is protecting U.S.? Why is it sort of an overt criticism from leader of an ally? And what does U.S. need protection from an ally?
I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah. Well, he said when Israel fights Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, we are fighting Iran. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you. So why does the U.S. need protection from an ally? Isn't the U.S. doing enough?
It is clear that Israel and the United States share a concern about Iran's activities. And the prime minister is not wrong when you're going after groups like Hezbollah or Hamas in this case particularly, or when we together try to defend each other against the Houthi missiles and drones that continue to fly. That is also because of the proxy nature of it, also countering Iran's activities. I mean, together, that's what allies and partners do.
Thanks, John. Just to take the long view of this, very early in President Biden's presidency, February the 4th, 2021, he spoke at the State Department about his priorities in foreign policy. And he said that one of those priorities was reclaiming our credibility and moral authority. The Prime Minister of Israel is in the judgment of the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, a war criminal. Isn't hosting an alleged war criminal in the Oval Office undermining of credibility and moral authority?
No, because we don't consider him a war criminal.
But the International Criminal Court does.
We don't agree. And as we've said before, we don't find the ICC's finding to be relevant or appropriate in this case. We don't find him to be a war criminal. He's an ally and a partner and a friend.
Well, the chief prosecutor says that Israel does have legitimate war aims, of course, but the way Israel chose to achieve these in Gaza, namely intentionally causing death, starvation, great suffering, and serious injury to body or health of the civilian population, are criminal.
Is that a question? Because if it is, I've already answered it. We don't consider him a war criminal.
Thank you, Karine.
Thank you. Yes, she called you.
I thought you said Jenny.
Thank you very much.
No, Jenny?
Yeah.
My bad.
Thank you. Thank you, Karine, and thank you, John. I have a quick question. Recently, American families who were victims of Hamas filed a lawsuit against North Korea authorities in the U.S. federal court, demanding $1 billion in compensation from North Korea, claiming that North Korea was responsible because the weapons used by Hamas were weapons supported by North Korea. What is your comment on this?
Well, look, Mr. Kim continues to export military capability, and we continue to work with allies and partners and counterparts to hold them accountable for that. They're also exporting technology and weapon systems to Russia so they can kill innocent Ukrainians. And we're going to continue to hold them accountable for that kind of behavior.
Also, second question, if Vice President Kamala Harris is elected the next president, will she continue the foreign policy keep going on between U.S. and South Korea, or change?
I am not going to speak for a hypothetical electoral outcome, and I'm certainly not going to speak for the vice president in this regard. You really should talk to her team and her campaign.
Thanks, Karine. John, the president has been pushing for a peace deal, a ceasefire, for weeks, if not months. Now that he has announced that he's not running for another term, how, if in any way, that complicates those efforts to reach a peace deal?
We don't believe it does. And in the conversations that we've been having in just recent hours, there's no reason to suspect that his decision not to run for re-election is going to have an impact on our ability to get the deal done. What's going to have an impact, as I said before, is leadership. Leadership on all sides and the ability to continue to compromise. We are close. We just have to finish it.
The president also last night spoke about his goals in his remaining 6 months in office. One of those goals is to get back those wrongfully detained Americans, people like Evan Gershkovich from the Wall Street Journal.
And Paul Whelan.
And Paul Whelan, exactly. The president has been described by some as a lame duck president. Does it complicate those efforts to get back those wrongfully detained Americans?
I can assure you that we continue to work extremely hard at getting all wrongfully detained Americans around the world, including those in Russia that we've been talking about, getting them home where they belong. They don't need to, there's no reason for them to be detained. The whole team is working on this around the clock. I can absolutely assure you that.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer also on the last question. Yesterday, Netanyahu asked the U.S. to fast-track weapons in his speech. I'm wondering if the president is considering lifting his pause on the 2,000-pound bombs that the Israelis have requested.
No change to that policy at this time, and I would just add that that is the only shipment of the only type of weaponry that has been held up. That all the military security assistance that had been going to Israel continues to go to Israel. They are still getting the tools, the capabilities, and the weapons that they need for the fight that they're in.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Karine. What conversations has President Biden had with Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of her meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister?
I won't speak to private conversations between the president and the vice president. I wouldn't do that on any given day, and I'm certainly not going to do it starting today. The vice president, I'm sure her team will give her a readout of how the conversation between the president and the prime minister is going right now, and that will, I'm sure, inform her conversation, but I'm not going to get more detailed than that.
And just second question, what additional pressure is the president willing to exert upon Netanyahu, just given that the framework, as my colleague mentioned, was just submitted about a few weeks ago and still nothing has come of that?
The framework for the deal? I mean, my goodness, there's, I know we're not there yet, and I get that there's more work to be done, but think about what has happened since he laid that out on the 31st of May. We went from that framework proposal to getting the framework itself agreed to now by both sides. There's some haggling that's being done over some of the details. Some of that haggling has had positive result, and we have closed some gaps. There are still gaps that remain to be closed, as I said earlier, some details that need to be worked out. There's an awful lot of energy and effort being put into this, certainly by our team, but I go so far as to say by our counterparts as well.
Okay, Jay. Thank you, Karine. I've got two questions, but first, can you tell me the backstory behind the nice bling you've got around your neck over there?
Well, I had a chance to meet with some of the hostages' families myself back in December. And the father of one gave me this to wear. And I try to wear it as much as I can, just to remember that, again, 293 days they need to be home with their families. And since they're here at the White House, and this is going to be a prime topic of conversation, I thought it was appropriate to wear it today.
Does the president have one?
I don't know.
Okay, I got two questions. Is it or is it not the U.S. government's position that UNRWA is complicit in terrorism?
UNRWA does some things that no other agency can do on the ground in Gaza. You and I both know that. Now, there has been an investigation done to some of their employees, and I understand that there's been some additional claims or charges against additional employees too that have been laid out there. But it's clear to us that UNRWA has taken this seriously. They fully investigated it. They eliminated the employment of those that they believe were involved in terrorist activities. It's absolutely unacceptable, not just to us, but it should be, and we believe it is unacceptable to UNRWA. But UNRWA is still, and yes, I know we're not providing funding them now because of legislation, but I think it's important for people to know that there are things that can't get done without UNRWA's cooperation and support on the ground.
And the government's position is that those are claims and charges, right? Claims and charges.
Some of them have been verified because they did their own investigation, UNRWA did, and terminated some of those employees. So clearly there was something to it.
My second question, Hezbollah has been firing thousands of rockets. At what point does that violate the president's don't warning?
We are working, as I said in my opening statement, to try to resolve the differences at and around the blue line. We haven't seen, although there has been firing back and forth across that blue line, we want to see that stop. We haven't seen it escalate into an all-out war here, nor do we want that to happen, which is why we're working so hard diplomatically to try to find a solution. One of the things that the Prime Minister and the President will talk about today is what we need to do, what more do we need to do to stabilize the situation on the blue line so that families, both Lebanese and Israeli, can start to move back to their homes.
All right, let's let the Admiral go. Go ahead, Jerry. You have the last question.
Thank you, Karine. Good afternoon, Admiral. The progress that you cite as it relates to sort of the phase one hostage and ceasefire deal, does that signal that there has also been progress in the day after post-conflict Gaza and sort of what that government looks like?
No, those are two different processes. I mean, when I'm talking about progress made and gaps that can be closed, I'm talking about the ceasefire deal itself, which, as you know, has two phases to it. Phase one gets you 6 weeks of a ceasefire and the return of the most vulnerable, but not all, but the most vulnerable of hostages. That's a separate process than what you call the day after, which is something, frankly, that Secretary Blinken's been working on since almost the day after October 7th in terms of trying to figure out with our partners on the ground, including the Israelis, but Arab partners, what does governance look like when the war is over, and how are the aspirations of the people of Gaza actually met by a governing body and a governing authority that has an interest in meeting their aspirations for peace and security.
How would you characterize that process right now?
It's ongoing, and still a lot of work is being done. I mean, if you want me to give it a report card, I can't do that, but I can tell you that Secretary Blinken, Jake Sullivan, the whole team is still very much dedicated to that.
And John, Pope Francis reiterated this call today for an Olympic truce. Can you comment on that?
All right. Okay.
Thanks, Karine. Yes.
Thank you, Admiral. I forgot to thank you.
Yesterday, you were asked a couple of times about the rationale for the president's decision to tune in. One thing the president did not say was explicitly why he stepped aside. You talked about how he believed in the best interest of the country to step aside. Why did he believe he was going to lose to Donald Trump?
Look, I think that the president actually answered this question. I think the American people think he answered the question. He said, I revere this office, but I love my country more. He said, I draw strength and I enjoy in working for the American people, but this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, our families, your futures. And I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. He talked about unity. He talked about passing the torch. I know there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life, but there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. That is what he said. That is why he laid out why he's passing the torch, why it's time to give it over to new, fresh voices. And he also talked about unity. And I would also refer back to his letter where he talked about also wanting to unify his party.
Did the president believe that his presence in that race was divisive?
I'm not going to get into more than what the president laid out. He talked about unity. He talked about bringing the party together. He talked about putting the country first. He talked about passing over the torch, bringing in new voices. I think he laid out very clearly why he decided to make this decision. And I believe the American people got it. They understood it.
If it was clear, I wouldn't be asked the question, but I'll move on.
I think it's clear. Okay. I do. I think the American people do.
For several weeks, the White House has said, had said multiple times that the president was not going to leave the race. He ultimately did. You've also said several times that the president would not pardon or commute the sentences for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
Thank you, Karine. So picking up on Zeke.
Yeah, sure.
For such a monumental decision, the president did address why he left the race.
Well, thank you.
But he left a lot of it for us to read between the lines. He did not make clear why he's leaving the race, even in the excerpts that you bring up.
Yeah.
He says that, the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. Is he saying it's because he was too old? In another one, he said that it was for the sake of democracy. That does not answer why he thought he was in the way of democracy. So why did he make this decision?
A new generation, and he also said the next sentence was to unite. It's also to unite the nation. Look, the president has talked about this twice. One in a letter that he addressed to the American people on Sunday, laying out a very monumental, to your point, it is a monumental decision that he made, and he thought very long and hard. He also said that he's been serving this country as a public servant for more than 50 years. It is not an easy decision to make. He talked about unity. He talked about the next generation. He talked about passing the torch. I was asked in this room a couple of days, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, all of these days are coming together, that when the president ran in 2020, he talked about passing the torch. He talked about the next generation. He talked about being a bridge to the next generation. And I was asked, is that something that the president still wants to do and still cares about? And I said, yes. And so this is part of that, right? This is part of what he said in 2020. He talked about unifying the nation. He talked about unifying the party. And he believed the time was now. The time was now to step down from his reelection and to move, ahead with the next 6 months, the end of his term. And that's what he decided to do.
Before he made the decision, he said that there were 3 things that could sway him: the Lord Almighty, a medical condition, and if his team showed him that he could not win. So was it because of the polling?
I can tell you it was not a medical decision, because I've been asked before, and we answer that very straightforward and in a very direct way. I'm just not going to get beyond that.
And then finally, President Biden spent much of his speech talking about the choice that Americans face in November. Trump's campaign manager called it a campaign speech. Your response?
My response is it's not a campaign speech. I will remind my friends on the other side that the president is no longer a candidate.
Thank you, Karine. Democrats on Capitol Hill are being handed this card with talking points about the vice president and the border. Do you know who's handing this out?
I have no idea. You probably should ask her campaign.
So the first one says Vice President Harris was never appointed border czar. There's never been such a position. It doesn't exist. Why are Democrats so sensitive about the vice president and the border?
Why are Republicans so sensitive about actually not owning up to them getting in the way of a border deal? Why? Why won't they own up to that? Why won't they own up to the last president told them not to move forward? It was a bipartisan deal on just right there, available to them, and they voted twice against it. Twice against it. Why are they so sensitive to moving forward and actually dealing on an issue that majority of Americans care about, is dealing with what's going on at the border?
Do you think that the border would be less of a talking point now if there was less migration to the border, say if somebody had addressed root causes of migration sooner?
Wait, hold on a second. Did you not hear the beginning of I know there were a lot of toppers, but one of the toppers, I talked about what we're seeing at the border. It's down by 55%, not because of Republicans in Congress and what they did. It's because what this president and this vice president did. He moved forward and took actions to deal with what's going on at the border. Republicans continue to block getting resources to the Border Patrol agents. They continue to block actually dealing with an immigration system. So yes, we are going to debunk the false characterization of the vice president. She was not a border czar. And it's not just us. Independent fact checkers have said the same thing, that did not exist. And that is not true.
And a different topic, Russia and China are teaming up in the skies near Alaska for the first time ever. Are you getting a sense yet, based on everything that's been going on, that some of America's enemies might be looking at what's happening here and think there's nobody in charge?
So let me just say this. There is very much someone in charge. The president is the president until the end of his term. So that statement is certainly false. And we have seen the president bring together our allies and partners. He reinvigorated NATO. He got more than 50 countries behind Ukraine to make sure that they were able to defend themselves against Putin. He stood up to Putin, and he's done a lot more. And now, right now, as we're speaking, I believe it's still happening. The president is having a bilateral conversation meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel. So, who, by the way, the Prime Minister of Israel thanked the president for the work that he's been able to do in helping to make sure that Israel is able to have an ironclad security, right? And so that's that. But let me be clear. I want to actually address the basis of your question outside of saying there's no leadership. Our Department of Defense did not see this activity in Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone as a threat. North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, continues to monitor PRC and Russian activity near North America and to meet presence with presence. U.S. and Canadian aircraft detected, tracked, and intercepted the Russian and PRC aircraft. And more broadly, the U.S. remains concerned about the PRC and Russian collaboration across all instruments of national power that do not promote global stability and security, not just in the Arctic, but the president, if anything, if you look at his foreign policy objectives and what he's been able to do and what the last administration did, the last administration ruined our relationships with our partners and allies. This president had to fix that and make sure that we actually mended our relationship with our partners and allies. And that's what we've been able to do. And a perfect example is what we're seeing with Ukraine being able to defend itself against Russia's aggression. Okay.
So yesterday and again today, you insisted that the president didn't make this decision because of a medical condition. It wasn't about his health. Yesterday, you said that he couldn't finish a second term if he won one. So was this decision to step out of the race just a political calculus? He just didn't think he could beat Trump.
I don't have anything else to add to what the president said himself last night, to what he penned and released to the American people on Sunday. Don't have anything more to add to that. He wanted to unite the country. He wanted to pass the torch. He felt after 50 plus years of public service, the time was to do just that. I don't have anything else to add.
Do you have anything to add on what he teased about proposing reform of the Supreme Court?
So that is something certainly that the president would talk to more about in the upcoming weeks. Just for folks who may have missed that, he said last night, he said, I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform. And I answered this question, I said this part of to a question yesterday. He believes if you are serving in high office, you should be held to transparency, accountability, and you should be held to a high ethics. That's what the president believes. I'm certainly not going to get ahead of the president, and he will have more to share with all of you soon.
I know many of my colleagues have asked these questions, and just given the historic nature of the announcement and the decision, I think it's important to get some more transparency. You just said that the president thought long and hard about the decision to exit the race, but also yesterday you said that he made a decision on Saturday night, and prior to that,
you could still think about something long and hard if he started thinking about it on Saturday night and finally made his decision on Sunday.
That doesn't seem like
I mean, that's your assumption. But that is your assumption. Not everybody will have that same assumption or thought, right? I mean, it is a decision that he felt that he needed to make, and that was the TikTok of it, if you will. We were laying out to you how it happened, and that's how it happened. That's how the president said it happened.
And do you expect the president to address any further his decision-making process, as my colleagues have asked?
Yeah.
We don't feel that we have gotten the clarity about how he made this monumental decision, and so obviously we would love an opportunity to ask him questions himself. But barring that, do you think we should expect any more clarity?
Look, the president's gonna make his decision on his own on how much more he wants to share. Obviously, he gave an Oval address and addressed the American people, as he said he was going to do in his letter back on Sunday. And he had a letter on Sunday as well. Maybe there'll be more that he wants to share. We have 6 months. Certainly, the president enjoys taking all of your questions, or he'll continue to do just that. I don't have anything to share beyond what you've heard from the president on Sunday and his Oval address to the American people last night.
Just one last one on sort of the next 6 months. We just asked Kirby about this, but is there anything you can tell us about how operations at the White House may change, the president's schedule may change, anything else that reflects, obviously, he has a lot more time now that he's not going to be full-time?
I mean, you're right. He has a lot more time now. He won't be a candidate. That is true. And the president said he wants to continue his, obviously, as he was doing before, continue and solely focused on being president and what that means and for the American people, and delivering and building on unprecedented successes that he's been able to get done, right? We still have a lot more to do. We still have to make sure I was just out about the Supreme Court, right? He mentioned that in his speech. I won't get ahead of that. That is something that he cares about, the ethics, right, and transparency, something he wants to make sure that is addressed. Again, not going to get ahead of the president, but he gave a little bit of that. He laid out what he's done for almost 4 years and making sure we're building on that, whether it is continuing to lower costs. He talked about that. Bringing down inflation, creating good paying jobs. All of these historic legislation that he was able to get done, they still have to be implemented, right? Whether it's the Chips and Science Act, whether it's the infrastructure bill, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act, there's still a lot of work to get done to make sure that we deliver the good things, the good components of those now laws to the American people. Still a lot to get done. He's focused on it, and we will certainly have more to share. As you know, he's going to be going to Austin on Monday, and so stay tuned. Stay tuned. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. So after President Biden said he was going to step aside and endorse Vice President Harris, Democrats quickly coalesced around Vice President Harris. I was wondering if President Biden sought assurances from other leading, Democratic candidates that they would challenge her, that they wouldn't challenge her.
I'm not going to get into specifics or behind the scenes conversation. I'm just not. And also that's kind of on the campaign, the political side. So going to be careful from here. Look, I think it's important that what we saw the first 48 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours after the president decided not to run, the coalescing of support behind the vice president, which is not surprising. She has been a partner, a critical partner to this president in everything that we have been able to successfully get done, some historic items that we've been able to get done. She's been a critical partner to this president. She has 4 years, almost 4 years of experience as vice president, also as a senator, also as attorney general. She has an impressive resume. And I have said this before, and I'll say it again, I do not see, and the president obviously did not see anyone else who would be more qualified to step in. And so it is not surprising that she got the support that she has and continues to get. And the president certainly is going to continue to support her. Okay, Jeff.
Thanks, Karine. The president praised Vice President Harris last night in his address as a good partner and a strong leader. Will he have any objections if she starts creating a little bit of distance with him on any policy areas?
Look, certainly I can't speak to how she's going to move forward with her campaign on policy issues. It's something that the campaign would have to address directly. I would say, again, kind of repeating myself, but saying this in a little bit different way, the last 4 years has been very successful policy-wise. They've been able to get things done. They've been able to turn around the economy. We have not to forget, we should not forget what happened when the president and the vice president stepped into their roles, right? They stepped into the presidency, the administration. We had a once-in-a-century pandemic that the president turned us around, and with the help of the vice president. You think about the American Rescue Plan, you think about Inflation Reduction Act. Many of these legislation, she played a role in getting it across the aisle. She also presides, right, in the Senate, right? She really gave us some really important votes in getting things done. So they've been partners in this. You know, I don't want to get into hypotheticals here about how she's going to move forward with her campaign. But you think about crime, you think about healthcare, you think about the economy, you think about immigration and the successes that we have seen in those particular areas. And that's just a few. Foreign policy.
Really?
She's been a partner in that.
Sure, and she'll no doubt have to run on the record that they have together, but the relationship has changed a little bit. She's not just a supportive vice president now, she's also the candidate and the candidate for the party going forward in the election. So if she decides to show a little bit more of her own views on Gaza, for example, is the president okay with that?
Look, a hypothetical that I don't want to go down a rabbit hole in, what I say is that the president respects the vice president. He endorsed her, believing that, as I said, passing the torch to the next generation of new voices, that she was more than qualified to do the job, more than qualified to step in on day one, as he said himself. I'm just repeating him. And I think that says volumes coming from a president who's been a senator, who's been a vice president, right? Who knows how this place works, who knows how Congress works, now who knows what it's like to be president of the United States. I think that is, I think coming from this president says a lot. I don't want to get into hypotheticals here. They are pretty much have been hand in glove, if you will, these past 4 years on getting things done on the different policy issues. And I suspect that will continue. Good, Karen.
You mentioned now about what the president said last night about the vice president, but one thing he didn't do was explicitly tell Americans to vote for her. He said, now the choice is up to you, the American people. Why not use that moment when he had millions of people tuned in to say that message flat out?
Because he was being mindful. This was an Oval address. This was not a campaign political address. This was an Oval address. And he thought it was important, as he said it. He started off his remarks talking about being at the Resolute desk, talked about the space and the portraits that were in the room, the busts that were in the room, the importance, the heavy weight of that office. And he believed this was a monumental decision, as many of you have reminded me today, that he made. And he wanted to take that opportunity to talk through what he's been able to deliver, to talk about what it meant for him to be president, an honor of a lifetime, and, you know, to lay out what this next 6 months is going to be. And so that's what he wanted to focus on. There will be plenty of times for him to go out on the campaign trail and talk about choices and talk about what's at stake. I'm going to be very careful here, but there will be plenty of time to do that. He didn't feel like that was the time to do that was last night.
And can you tell us a little bit about after the speech? We know from some social media posts, we could hear that the president walked out to the Rose Garden and several hundred staff were out there. But what was that like? What did you do afterwards? Private time with family? Just tell us how his mood was.
Look, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. The president went to the Rose Garden. There were hundreds of staff cheering him on. Very proud to have been part of this administration, many of us since the beginning of this administration, almost 4 years. And he also wanted to appreciate the staff. He knows how hard it's been, not just the past 3.5 years, but certainly the past couple of weeks. And so I think it was a very special moment, very proudful moment for the staff here. I was there out in the Rose Garden, got to listen to him speak off the cuff and say thank you. And talk about, you know, the work that we have been able to get done, the historic amount of work that we've been able to get done, and what's ahead the next 6 months. So yes, there were hundreds of staff here in the Rose Garden. Some of us, I was able to be in the Oval and watch the president deliver the remarks. Many of the staffers were able to watch together here at the White House in the residence. And afterwards, we all came together and cheered on the president and thanked him. And so I think, and he was able to thank us and appreciate us as well. Okay, John.
Just following up on that, Karine, what's the mood of the staff right now?
I think
I'm sorry. No, it's all right. I'm just curious. Is there melancholy? What's the exact mood right now?
I think it's a little bit of what I just said to Karen. I think there's a lot of pride in the work that we've been able to get done under this leadership of this president. I think that there's a lot of understanding. There's a lot more work to be done in the next 6 months. We're energized. And look, I mean, I'm going to be very honest. It's been hard. It's been very hard. You know, when you do these jobs, you believe in the work ahead. You believe in the leadership of the person that you're working for, this person being Joe Biden. And so it has been a tough couple of weeks, but we are so full of pride of what we've been able to get done. And now there's 6 months left.
I noticed, and maybe I misread it, but when you had your prepared remarks at the very top, it seemed as if you got a little emotional talking a little bit of, no, I missed that. Let's read that.
No, I mean, it is, I've said it. It's an emotional moment for everyone, you know, including me. It's an emotional moment. You know, this is, you know, you do these jobs. They don't pay all that well, as you know. You guys have tough jobs as well. And it takes you away from your family. You don't sleep as much. They are, you know, 24/7 jobs for sure. And you do it because you believe in the work. Whichever side of the aisle you're in, right? I would hope and think that people who do these jobs believe that you're going to make people's lives better, right? Or you're very much connected to the issues that you're working on. I think that's important. So yes, it's emotional. It's emotional. Okay.
Thank you. What would the president say to those who have increased the attack on vice president based on the color of the skin, the gender, even using terms like lunatics?
So look, there's something I do want to say about that. When you have the Speaker of the House, obviously he's a Republican, and this is something that you all have reported, set up a meeting to tell Republican leaders to stop being racist, to stop being misogynist, to stop being sexist. I think that says a lot, that they have to be told to not do that. But more broadly, I think it's desperate. I think it's disgusting, and I think it's a dog whistle. And we should not forget that she is the Vice President of the United States. She's the Vice President of the United States. She should get that respect.
It's
She's
the
been
first
doing
time
this
I've
job
really
with the president for almost 4 years.
Vice
She's a
President,
former
to be
senator
honest.
and has been a critical partner in getting the economy restarted, in making sure that that we deal with the pandemic. And to hear that is frankly disgusting.
Follow up on the proper about the illegal.
Say that last part.
I have one more question to follow up basically on what you said about the legal immigration system at the top of your remarks.
Yeah.
There are around 200,000 American kids who came to this country at the age of maybe 6 months, 2 years, but they're all facing deportation as they age out at 21 years of age. Around 40 senators and congressmen wrote a letter to the administration that coming out with some legal mechanism so that they can stay in this country. That many of them are doing quite well. What would the president be doing for them?
I mean, look, I certainly we don't have any policy announcements to make at this time. But again, I talked about the bipartisan agreement that came together from the Senate, where we negotiated a process to help the so-called documented dreamers. And sadly, Republicans, and I've said this many times already at this podium today, which is that they voted it down twice. They voted it down twice. And as I said at the top, we are going to provide protection to more than 500,000 people and keep families together in the U.S. That is something that the president announced back in June, and that is something that we're going to continue to do. Look, the way to deal with a broken immigration system is to get legislative process done and move forward. We started that. Republicans voted it down twice. We had a bipartisan option. That would have been the toughest and the fairest way to move forward in dealing with the immigration system, something we hadn't seen in years, and they voted it down twice. And so that is how we're going to move forward, is making sure Congress gets the work done that they need to. I think I have to, right? Get it.
Thanks, great. Two topics, the economy first, if I could.
Sure.
There's a new CNN poll out that says 39% of adults worry most of the time or all of the time that their income will not be enough to meet expenses. Prices are up 19% since President Biden and Kamala Harris, the vice president, came into office. How long do Americans have to wait till this worry goes away?
So look, too many families are still struggling to make ends meet. That is something that the president understands,
But then
and
why
that
do
is
so
why
many
he
other
works every
people
single
care?
day to make sure that we address these issues for hardworking Americans. I talked about the historic accomplishments that this president has done. You think about the Inflation Reduction Act, which only Democrats voted for. Insulin is now capped at $35 a month for seniors. The president wants to see that go more broadly. This goes into the question that I was asked: what else does he want to do? Continue to lower costs, right? You think about what he's been able to do to get housing assistance for Americans who are having a hard time with rent, with getting a house. And so he has taken actions to deal with that issues that Americans have. We get it. We get it. Over the next 6 months, that's what we want to continue to focus on as well. And we know that Americans, again, are having a difficult time. But our stance and how we see this country is very clear. Republicans want to give a tax break to corporations, a big tax giveaway to corporations and billionaires. They want to actually go after Social Security and Medicare. That's not what we believe. That's not what we want to do. We want to protect those important programs that Americans need.
So if I could, the other topic. Last night, the president kept with the theme of saving democracy, alluding to the fact that maybe former President Trump is a threat to democracy. The vice president is using the same language. Is this a dangerous rhetoric?
Look, it is important that we continue to talk about unity. It is. Saving democracy, making sure that we're unified as a country. And he called on the country to come together. That is something that is a theme that he's talked about since 2019. Since 2019, nothing new here. And I'll quote, "Keep calling out hate and extremism. Make it clear there is no place in America for political violence." That's something that the president said last night, or any violence ever, period. "I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids and gun violence. This is something that the president truly believes in. But bringing the country together is a big part of that. Is actually the theme. Unity is the theme that you heard from his remarks last night. Go ahead, Jenny.
He still talks about a threat to democracy. I mean, there are now 3 public attempts that were, or threats to the former president that we know of.
Yeah.
Iran being one of them, the shooter the other night. So how many threats are enough to lower the temperature?
The president has called on lowering the temperature. But here's the thing, Ed. It takes on all of us to lower the temperature. All of us. I hope you can read between the lines of what I mean by all of us. It takes all of us to take that action and to lower the temperature. And I think when you have a president that uses the Oval Address to talk about unity, not just once, he did it right after, sadly, right after the former president, the attempted assassination of the former president, talked about lowering the temperature then, and also talked about really denouncing, condemning political violence and how it has no place in this nation. He talked about, use the Oval Office to do just that. And we've been condemning political violence for some time. Yeah, Jenny.
Passing the torch obviously was the central theme yesterday of the
Many
address.
themes.
Okay, one of the central themes. And you just mentioned his commitment in 2020 to run as a bridge candidate. 2 weeks ago at the NATO press conference, he was asked exactly that and what changed, why he's not doing this anymore. He said, what changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, of foreign policy, and domestic division. Obviously, since the presser, none of these factors have changed. So I think it's a fair question for all of us to ask you if you can help us understand his shift in thinking.
No, sorry. Go ahead. No, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
Made him arrive at this conclusion that passing the torch now is the right time.
And it is a fair question to ask. I don't have anything else to add to what the president said. I'm not going to get ahead of this president. I'm just not. He put out a letter and he said what he wanted to say about the situation last night. I'm not going to get ahead of it. I'm not saying it's not a fair question to ask. I do not have anything more to add than what the president said. Yes, he talked about passing the torch. He talked about unity. He talked about bringing the country together. That is what he wanted to share to the American people. If there is more to say, I will leave that to him to say that. I don't have anything else to add.
Quick thing, obviously, Kirby just teased that there might be opportunities for trips or legacy engagements in the next 6 months. Is there anything you have talked to him about, something that he wants to do before he leaves office?
I think he's still thinking through it. You know, I think that it's going to be a process. We have a lot of things that we want to get done domestically in foreign policy space. NSC is thinking through it. The president's thinking through it. And when we have more to share, we certainly will share that with all of you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
all right, bye.
Wow. Well, I don't know. Did we learn much there or not? It was a busy morning, wasn't it? Holy smokes. Well, we've been listening to all this stuff from one aspect or another for about 3 hours. So I am going to call it. In the meantime, though, while I'm waiting, well, not waiting, what I'll be doing after this stream is I'm going to continue looking into the Hooter Thomas Matthew Crooks. There's so much coming out right now on him that I would really like to be able to talk to you guys about what happened and, you know, how long had he been thinking about this? Who's seen who do what? Who called who? Like, there is so many questions still about what happened on July 13th. So we are going to touch on that again, probably later today at some point. And I'm also going to get updates on some of the cases we're following as well. So make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.